There's a moment, quiet, imperceptible, when reality begins to blur. Not all at once, but gently, like a fog rolling in on a familiar path. You remember something clearly, vividly, but then someone looks at you and says, "That never happened." And just like that, a crack forms in the mirror of your mind. Gaslighting isn't cruel in obvious ways. It doesn't shout to be heard. It whispers. It smiles. It pretends to care. It wraps itself in phrases like, "You're overreacting," or "You're just too sensitive." And with each gentle denial of your experience, you begin to shrink inside yourself, questioning the soundness of your memory, your perception, your truth. It's a subtle erosion, a slow unraveling of certainty. Like a candle flickering in the wind, your inner knowing starts to waver. You wonder, did I imagine that? Did I twist it in my mind? Maybe. I was wrong? And that's how the game is played. Not by force, but by making you doubt your own compass. You see, gaslighting thrives not because you are weak, but because you are deeply kind, because you listen, because you care enough to question yourself, just to keep the peace. It weaponizes your empathy, uses your softness against you, until the version of you you once knew becomes a stranger you don't quite trust. But here, in the hush of this moment, let something gentle and certain reach you again. You are not broken. You're not confused. Your mind, though shaken, still holds truth. The light within you, dimmed perhaps, never went out. And if someone tried to replace your reality with their illusion, let this be the breath that brings you back. Back to yourself. Back to clarity. Back to the quiet power of knowing that your reality is real. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Why some people use silent treatment as power. Silence can be sacred. It can be healing, peaceful, a space where hearts breathe and wounds soften. But silence, in the wrong hands, can become a weapon. And sometimes, it's not peace someone wants, but control. There are silences that hold love, the comfortable quiet between two souls who understand each other without words. And then there are silences that suffocate, drawn-out voids that punish, that isolate, that leave you aching for even the sound of disapproval. Because at least disapproval would mean acknowledgement. But this absence? It's like standing in a room where you no longer exist. The silent treatment isn't about needing time to think. It's not the quiet that follows pain. It's the intentional withholding of connection. It's, I see you, I hear you, but I'm choosing to erase you for a while. And it works, not because it's loud, but because it leaves you to echo in your own doubt. You begin to ask yourself, what did I do wrong? Should I apologize? Was it me? Even if deep down you know it wasn't. The silence is meant to pull you closer, to make you chase the person who shut the door in your face. It's control dressed up as distance, punishment disguised as calm. But listen, you are not responsible for filling the void someone created. You are not required to beg for noise where there is deliberate quiet. Your voice, your presence, your pain, they matter, even if someone else chooses not to acknowledge them. Because real love doesn't hide in silence. It doesn't use absence as leverage. It holds space, even when it hurts. And tonight, let this be your soft awakening. You deserve to be heard without having to beg for it. It starts like a dream, a rush, a wave, a flood of affection that feels like destiny finally noticed you. They say all the right things. They look at you like you hung the stars. They reply instantly, call you constantly, make promises that sound like poetry. You tell yourself this is it. This is what love must feel like. But deep in your body, something trembles. Not out of fear, not yet, but out of overwhelm. Because love that rushes in too fast often isn't love at all. It's a performance, a seduction, a mask of something sacred wrapped in urgency. Love bombing doesn't look dangerous at first. It looks like passion. It looks like attention you've waited years to receive. But its pace is its warning sign, because real love takes its time. It breathes, it listens, it asks, before it takes. When someone showers you with too much, too soon, it may not be about you at all. It may be about possession, about creating dependency before you notice the cracks. Because once the intensity fades, and it always does, what's left behind is often confusion, withdrawal, even cruelty. You're left wondering, was it ever real? And that question can haunt you deeper than any heartbreak. But let this soothe you tonight. You were never foolish for wanting to believe. You were never weak for receiving love with open arms. Your heart is a beautiful thing, and it deserves love that lingers long after the fireworks fade. You don't need grand gestures. You need quiet consistency. A love that doesn't burn fast, but stays lit in the dark. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Love bombing. Too much, too soon. It starts like a dream. A rush, a wave, a flood of affection that feels like destiny finally noticed you. They say all the right things. They look at you like you hung the stars. They reply instantly, call you constantly, make promises that sound like poetry. You tell yourself this is it. This is what love must feel like. But deep in your body, something trembles. Not out of fear, not yet, but out of overwhelm. Because love that rushes in too fast often isn't love at all. It's a performance, a seduction, a mask of something sacred wrapped in urgency. Love bombing doesn't look dangerous at first. It looks like passion. It looks like attention you've waited years to receive. But its pace is its warning sign, because real love takes its time. It breathes, it listens, it asks, before it takes. When someone showers you with too much, too soon, it may not be about you at all. It may be about possession, about creating dependency before you notice the cracks. Because once the intensity fades, and it always does, what's left behind is often confusion, withdrawal, even cruelty. You're left wondering, was it ever real? And that question can haunt you deeper than any heartbreak. But let this soothe you tonight. You were never foolish for wanting to believe. You were never weak for receiving love with open arms. Your heart is a beautiful thing, and it deserves love that lingers long after the fireworks fade. You don't need grand gestures. You need quiet consistency. A love that doesn't burn fast, but stays lit in the dark. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Breadcrumbing in modern dating. It's the smallest gesture. A hey at midnight. A heart on your story. A message just when you start to forget them. And suddenly, the hope flickers back on. Faint, but familiar. This is breadcrumbing. The art of keeping someone close enough to matter, but never close enough to be held. They never truly vanish, but they never fully arrive either. They offer you fragments. A compliment here, a flirtation there, enough to make your heart tilt forward, but never enough to let it rest. You wait, for more, for clarity, for something real. And they know this. They sense your hunger, your hope. They know just how much to give to keep you waiting. And so you find yourself caught in a loop, checking your phone more than you'd like to admit, second-guessing your worth in the space between replies, wondering if you're asking for too much when all you really wanted was honesty. Breadcrumbing isn't a lack of interest. It's a manipulation of it. It keeps you tethered to a maybe, to a version of love that only lives in potential. But here's a truth, soft as a lullaby. You were never meant to survive on crumbs. You were meant to be nourished, fully, freely, without hesitation. The person who wants you will not confuse you. They will not ration their affection like it's a currency you must earn. They will not leave you starving for a full meal of love. So let the breadcrumbs fall behind you. Let them mark the trail away from those who only half choose you. There is more ahead. There is whole love ahead. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. The push-pull dynamic. Hot and cold love. It's a dance, this push-pull. A rhythm of closeness and distance, where warmth turns to ice and tenderness turns into space. It's the thrill of being needed and the confusion of being pushed away. At first, it's intoxicating. You get the best of both worlds, the warmth of someone who's fully present and the coolness of someone who is just distant enough to make you crave them more. It's like a fire that burns, then flickers, and you can't quite tell if it's going to blaze or die out. And so you chase. You run towards them when they open their arms and retreat when the door slams shut. But with each step forward, you're caught in this uncertainty, this game where affection is given, but only on their terms. You wonder, what did I do wrong? Why do they pull away when I get too close? You begin to ask yourself why it feels so magnetic. Why does this push-pull pull so strongly on your heart? Is it love? Or just the intoxication of the chase? But somewhere deep inside, you know this dynamic isn't love. Love doesn't leave you guessing, doesn't make you feel like you're playing a game. Real love is steady. It's the same in the light and in the dark. The push-pull dynamic thrives on uncertainty, on the idea that love is earned through distance, through absence. But love is not a game, and you are not a prize to be won. Let go of the cycle. Step out of the dance of hot and cold. You deserve a warmth that never wanes, a love that stays without the games. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Emotional blackmail in close relationships. Imagine a tug of war, but this one isn't fought with ropes or strength. It's fought with your feelings, with your very heart. And the ropes aren't tied to your hands, but to your deepest fears, your greatest insecurities, your quietest doubts. Emotional blackmail is not loud, but it is powerful. It slips into the spaces where you feel most vulnerable, twisting your love into a weapon. If you really loved me, you'd do this. You're the reason I feel this way. If you leave, I don't know what I'd do. These words, designed to make you feel guilty, to make you believe that their pain is your fault, are the threads that hold you in place. Because love, at its core, is compassionate. And so, when someone you care about is hurting, you'll bend over backwards to ease their pain. But in emotional blackmail, you're asked to bend until you break. It's a cycle of manipulation. They give you just enough love to make you feel like you're doing something right, and then pull it away the moment you get too comfortable. Every time you try to find your footing, they pull harder. You begin to question yourself. Should I have done more? What if they're right? What if I'm not enough? But here's a gentle reminder. No one has the right to hold your love hostage. No one can demand that you sacrifice your peace for the comfort of their control. True love doesn't demand. It doesn't manipulate. It doesn't make you feel like you're responsible for someone else's happiness. It nurtures you, it grows with you, and it stands alongside you, not above you. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Passive aggression. The hidden emotional war. It's quiet. It's subtle. And yet, it has the power to unsettle your soul. Passive aggression isn't spoken outright. It's hidden in the spaces between words. It's in the silence after a question is asked, in the smile that doesn't quite reach the eyes. It's the kind of anger that doesn't shout, but lingers like smoke in the room, where everyone knows it's there, but no one can name it. Instead of confrontation, passive aggression drips out in small doses. A sarcastic remark here, a backhanded compliment there, a sudden forgetfulness, a withdrawal, a refusal to participate in something you thought was shared. It's like trying to walk in a room full of shadows, where you can't see clearly, but you feel the weight of their presence. The person who uses passive aggression isn't looking for a fight. They don't want you to know how they really feel, because that would mean acknowledging the anger, the frustration, the hurt they won't admit to themselves. So instead, they hide behind their silence, their nonchalant comments, and the distance they create. But here's the thing. No matter how subtle the attack, no matter how much they try to mask it in kindness, you feel it. You feel the weight of their unspoken words, the sting of their hidden resentment. And it makes you question your own actions. You ask yourself, did I do something wrong? But the truth is, it's not about you. It's about them. Passive aggression is not love. It's not care. It's a defense mechanism, a way to stay in control while pretending everything is fine. But it's not fine. And you don't have to live with it. You deserve honesty. You deserve words that match the intentions behind them. You deserve a relationship where communication flows freely, not like a river blocked by stones. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. The playing victim strategy in relationships. There's a subtle dance that some people know all too well. It's the art of shifting the spotlight, not to their strengths or their joys, but to their pain. It's not about sharing a burden. It's about making you carry it for them. Playing the victim isn't always done out of malice. Sometimes it's a learned response, a way to make sure the world revolves around their needs, their emotions, their discomforts. And the best part? It's not loud. It's soft, quiet, and insidious. You won't see it coming. They don't have to say, "Poor me." They don't have to beg for your sympathy. All they need to do is drop just enough breadcrumbs, a comment here, a sigh there, and you begin to feel responsible. You begin to feel like it's your job to fix their world. But the truth is, the victim card isn't a gift. It's a trap. And before you know it, you're drowning in their struggles, carrying their weight, while they do nothing to help themselves. You become the hero in their story, while they remain stuck in their own self-imposed misery. It isn't love. Love doesn't use guilt as a bridge. Love doesn't twist your empathy into chains. True love sees the pain in each other's eyes, but it doesn't burden the other with it. So if you find yourself being pulled into someone else's storm, remember this. You can offer compassion without losing yourself. You can hold space for their pain without being trapped by it. You are not responsible for fixing them, no matter how many times they drop the victim card in front of you. True strength comes from healing together, not from carrying someone else's baggage alone. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. How narcissists control. Without saying a word. There's a kind of control that doesn't require force. A subtle power that doesn't need to be shouted to be felt. It's the control that whispers, that lingers in the room, without ever needing to claim it. This is the silent manipulation of the narcissist. Narcissists don't always need to dominate through aggression. They control with presence, with charm, with the ability to make everything about them, even when their words don't directly demand it. They will make you feel seen and special, but only as long as you give them what they want. And the moment you stop, the moment you shift your focus away, they will pull back, withdraw, and make you feel like you're the one who's done something wrong. Their control comes not from what they say, but from what they refuse to say. From the silence they use to make you chase. From the subtle manipulations that leave you questioning your own worth. They play with your emotions, creating a constant need to prove yourself, a constant need to make them happy, as if your happiness depends on theirs. But here's the quiet truth. Their power over you is based on their ability to make you feel less than. It's their way of keeping you small, of keeping you questioning, of keeping you on your toes, so that you never quite feel safe, never quite feel enough. You don't need to be manipulated to feel loved. You deserve love that sees you fully, accepts you completely, without the need for control, without the constant shifting of power. So if you find yourself constantly seeking their approval, feeling drained by their need for validation, remember this. You are not defined by their gaze. You are whole, just as you are. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. The psychology behind giving mixed signals. There's a peculiar kind of dance that takes place when emotions aren't clearly defined. It's the art of sending signals, but never quite allowing them to align. It's the tug of war between attraction and hesitation, love and fear. And you find yourself caught in the middle, wondering whether you should move forward or pull back. Mixed signals are like waves on the shore, constant, unpredictable, and never quite enough to know if you should dive in or wait for the calm. They start with a flirtatious glance, then retreat into a cold silence. A warm embrace one day, and an invisible distance the next. You're never sure where you stand, and yet you can't help but keep searching for meaning in their every word, in their every action. But the truth is, giving mixed signals isn't just a game for the person who plays it. It's a reflection of their inner conflict. They want closeness, but they're terrified of it. They want affection, but they fear vulnerability. And so they send you signals that seem to pull you in, while their fear keeps them at a distance. For you, this back and forth feels exhausting. It leaves you questioning your worth, your role in the relationship, and wondering if your feelings are just a figment of your imagination. But here's a quiet realization. You don't have to chase the answers. You don't have to chase someone's affection, especially when it's unclear. True love doesn't leave you guessing. It doesn't make you chase after something that's always out of reach. Love that is whole, love that is pure, doesn't hide behind walls, doesn't withhold just to see you scramble. And as you lie here tonight, know this. You deserve clarity. You deserve consistency. And you deserve someone whose love shines as clearly as the stars in the night sky. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Why we stay in toxic relationships. It's strange, isn't it? How we can feel the weight of something heavy, the cold, sharp edges of a relationship that doesn't serve us, yet still hold on. We stay even when it hurts, even when we know deep down that something is wrong. But why? It starts with a need for connection, for validation, for the warmth of love, even if that warmth is only there in fleeting moments. In toxic relationships, love becomes a cycle, a roller coaster of highs and lows, and somewhere in the chaos, we tell ourselves, this is what love is supposed to feel like. We hold on because we don't know if we can have anything better. We think that love is supposed to be hard, that pain is part of the journey. And in this confusion, we convince ourselves that the little crumbs of affection we get are enough. Maybe I just need to try harder. Maybe if I change, they'll love me more. But here's the truth, whispered gently. You don't need to change who you are to earn love. You don't need to suffer through someone else's cruelty to feel worthy. You are worthy of love that nourishes you, that lifts you up, that makes you feel safe, secure, and seen. We stay because we are afraid of being alone, of facing the emptiness that might follow the end. We fear the unknown more than we fear the pain, and so we stay, tethered to something that holds us back. But in the quiet, you'll find the courage to release what doesn't serve you, to step into the unknown where true love waits. The love that is steady, the love that doesn't leave you questioning your worth, the love that walks with you, not beside you in silence, but beside you with open arms. So, when you're ready to let go, remember this: you deserve to walk into the light, not be stuck in a shadow. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. The psychology of obsessing over an ex. It's a strange thing, isn't it? How someone who is no longer part of your life can still fill every corner of your mind. You think you've let go, but then you find yourself replaying old memories, remembering their voice, their touch, wondering what they're doing now. And with each thought, it's as if they're still right there beside you, pulling at the edges of your heart. Why do we do this? Why do we keep holding on to something that's slipping through our fingers? Because deep down, we don't want to believe it's really over. We don't want to accept that what we thought was forever has turned into a chapter we can never reopen. But here's something quietly profound. Obsessing over an ex isn't just about them. It's about what they represented. It's about the version of ourselves we were when we were with them. It's the hope that something will shift, that somehow we can undo the hurt, rewrite the ending. And in the obsession, we try to hold on to that version of ourselves, the happy version, the together version. But the truth is, we can't go back. We can't reverse time. And every moment spent looking backwards is a moment we miss in moving forward. You are not your past. You are not the sum of your previous relationships. And though it's natural to grieve, to miss the connection, to wish things had turned out differently, it's also important to remember that your worth wasn't tied to them. Your strength wasn't given by them, and your future is yours to define. So when you find yourself caught in the spiral of memories, remember this: you have already survived the hardest part. Let go of the obsession. Free yourself from the chains of the past, because you are not bound to someone who no longer chooses you. You are free to choose yourself. There's a quiet ache when we try to let go, isn't there? It's not loud, not sharp, but it lingers, like a soft, unwelcome weight in your chest. And even when we know it's time to release, to move forward, it feels impossible. It's as if part of us believes that holding on is somehow the only way to keep a piece of them, to keep the good parts of what we had, frozen in time. But here's the truth. Letting go is hard because we fear the unknown. We fear what comes after the release, what comes after the silence, after the space left behind. And we convince ourselves that we're not ready to face that emptiness. We hold on because we fear the weight of the loneliness that might follow. We also hold on because we've invested so much. Our love, our time, our heart, our future plans, all tangled together, woven into the fabric of someone else. And to let go would feel like unraveling, like losing the pieces that made us who we were when we were together. But here's something tender to remember. It's not about losing the person. It's about reclaiming yourself. You were whole before them, and you will be whole again. The pieces you gave were never meant to stay behind. Letting go is the painful, necessary process of choosing yourself again. It's about clearing space for a new chapter, one that isn't defined by the absence of someone, but by the fullness of your own heart. You deserve to walk into that new space, to breathe without the weight of the past clinging to you. So, release. Not because you don't care, but because you do. You care enough to make room for your own healing. You care enough to set yourself free. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. The painful science of being ghosted. It's strange, isn't it? How someone can be there, then not be there at all. 1 minute, the conversation flows, the laughter's shared, the connection felt so deep. In the next moment, it's silence, an empty space where their words used to be. And you find yourself staring at your phone, waiting for a message that never comes, wondering if you did something wrong, wondering if they've just moved on. And no matter how many times you check, there's nothing. Just the echo of your own doubt. Ghosting isn't just about someone disappearing. It's about being left without closure, without explanation, without the decency of a goodbye. It's like being left in a room with the door shut in your face and no one telling you why. The pain of being ghosted isn't just about rejection. It's about the emotional abandonment that comes with it. It's the feeling of being erased, of all that connection, all those moments, reduced to nothing. The vulnerability you shared, the pieces of yourself you gave, they don't just disappear. They linger. They hurt. And the worst part is, you don't get the chance to fight for the connection. You don't get the chance to understand, to explain, or even to heal from it. The ghoster leaves you suspended in an emotional limbo, and you're left with more questions than answers. But here's a quiet truth. Being ghosted isn't about you. It's about them. It's about their inability to face the discomfort of confrontation, of truth, of responsibility. It's about their fear of being vulnerable, fear of hurting someone, fear of their own emotions. So let the silence speak for them. Let it show you that you deserve someone who stays. Someone who doesn't disappear in the face of discomfort, but someone who is willing to stand with you through the quiet, through the hard conversations, and through the healing. You are not defined by their silence. You are defined by your own strength, your ability to show up, to love deeply, and to move forward, even when someone else chooses to leave. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Trauma bonding. When pain feels like love. It's a paradox, isn't it? How something so painful can feel so familiar. How the very thing that hurts you also draws you back again and again, like gravity pulling you into an orbit you can't seem to escape. Trauma bonding happens when love and pain are intertwined, when moments of tenderness are followed by moments of cruelty. It's the cycle of ups and downs, where affection is given only after a fight, where apologies come only after silence. And in between, you start to believe that this chaos is love, that the emotional roller coaster is the price of connection. You see, love is meant to be healing, not something that makes you feel unworthy, not something that leaves scars on your heart. But in the depths of a trauma bond, it's easy to mistake intensity for passion, conflict for care, and silence for absence of love. You believe, if they're hurting me, it must be because they care. But that's not love. That's manipulation dressed as affection. You begin to justify their actions, to excuse their behavior, because in your mind, you've connected pain with love. It's the twisted logic of someone who's been hurt before, who thinks that love is supposed to come with struggle, that it's not real unless it's earned through hardship. But here's a gentle truth. You deserve more than this. You deserve love that feels like peace, that feels like home, not a battlefield. You don't have to earn affection through suffering. You don't have to keep choosing pain just to feel loved. True love doesn't come with strings attached, and it doesn't require you to sacrifice your happiness, your dignity, or your self-worth. And while leaving a trauma bond is hard, it's not impossible. It begins with acknowledging that you are worthy of something better, something real, something kind. And in that acknowledgement, you'll find the courage to let go. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Why you still miss someone who hurt you. It's one of the most perplexing feelings, isn't it? How, despite all the pain they caused, you still find yourself longing for their presence. How, despite the wounds, you still catch yourself wishing they would reach out, wish they would return and make it right. And in the silence of the night, when the world around you feels still, their absence somehow feels louder than their presence ever did. It's not about missing the hurt. No one misses the pain, the disappointment, the broken promises. What you miss is the version of love you believed in. You miss the hope, the connection, the feeling of being seen. And maybe, deep down, you still believe that the love you shared was real, or could have been, if only things had turned out differently. You see, when someone hurts you, your heart doesn't just let go of them in an instant. It holds on to the good moments, the laughter, the tenderness, the way they made you feel important, special, alive. Even though your mind knows they hurt you, your heart clings to the image of them you created, the one that felt like home. But here's a quiet realization. Missing someone doesn't mean you're meant to be with them. Sometimes the longing comes not from a place of love, but from the fear of being alone, of being without that connection, that warmth, that sense of importance. And so your heart, in its desire to fill the emptiness, holds on to the fragments of someone who isn't right for you. The truth is, you can miss someone and still choose to move on. You can remember the good times without allowing them to control your future. Because real love doesn't leave you questioning your worth. It doesn't leave you in the silence, wondering if you'll ever find something real again. So let yourself miss them, but also let yourself heal. Let yourself remember the lessons, the strength you found in letting go, and know that you are worthy of love that doesn't require you to carry the pain. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. When closure never comes. How to heal. It's a haunting thing, isn't it? When a chapter ends, but there's no clear conclusion, no neat bow to tie up the pain, no final words to ease the uncertainty. You're left in the space between knowing and not knowing, between understanding and confusion. And that's where the healing process often begins. Not in the certainty of closure, but in learning to let go without it. The thing about closure is, it's not something you can always get from someone else. It's not a conversation, a letter, a final apology. Sometimes the other person never gives it to you. Sometimes they don't even know how much you need it. And in those moments, you're left with nothing but the aching realization that some answers are never meant to come. And yet, you must still heal. You must still move forward. Healing without closure is like walking in the dark. But here's the secret. The light is already within you. It's the light of understanding, of accepting that you may never know why, but you can still find peace. You can still choose yourself. You can still choose to move on without that final word. It's not easy. It's not a smooth, clean journey. It's filled with twists and turns, with moments of doubt, and maybe even moments of rage. But as you walk through the fog, you'll find yourself stronger. You'll find yourself reclaiming the space they left behind, filling it with your own light, your own love, your own peace. Closure isn't always a gift you receive from others. Sometimes, it's the one thing you must give to yourself. You must choose to release the grip they still have on your heart. You must choose to heal, even without the answers you once thought you needed. Because you deserve to move on. You deserve to find peace within yourself. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Emotional unavailability explained slowly. There's a quiet emptiness in emotional unavailability, a space where love should be, but isn't. It's not loud. It doesn't demand attention. It just sits there, unnoticed at first, like a shadow you don't see until you turn around and it's everywhere. Emotional unavailability isn't always about someone's inability to love. Sometimes it's about their fear of it. They've been hurt before, or they've built walls so high they no longer know how to let anyone in. They give you just enough to keep you hopeful, but not enough to make you feel safe, secure, seen. It's like reaching for the warmth of the sun, only to find it slipping through your fingers the closer you get. At first, you tell yourself it's just a phase. Maybe they're busy. Maybe they're going through something. Maybe it's not you, it's them. And maybe, in some way, it is. But the truth is, emotional unavailability isn't always temporary. It's a state of being, a defense mechanism that someone uses to avoid vulnerability. You find yourself constantly questioning, what did I do wrong? Why can't I get through to them? Do they even care? But here's the thing. It's not about you. It's not about how much love you can give or how much affection you can show. It's about their walls, their inability to open up, to feel, to trust. And no matter how much you give, no matter how hard you try, those walls will remain. And so, you're left in this quiet limbo, feeling like you're giving everything, but receiving nothing in return. It feels like you're living in a one-sided relationship where only your heart is fully invested, while theirs remains hidden, locked away. But remember this, you deserve someone who can meet you halfway. You deserve someone who sees you, who is willing to open up, to share their heart, to be vulnerable with you. You are not meant to chase after love that keeps you at arm's length. And tonight, let this be your quiet reminder. You are worthy of the kind of love that flows freely, the kind that doesn't leave you wondering, the kind that brings you peace, not confusion. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. How cheating affects the brain. Cheating isn't just a betrayal of trust. It's a betrayal of the mind, of everything you thought was certain, secure. It shifts your reality, like an earthquake beneath the foundation of your beliefs. And when the dust settles, what you're left with isn't just heartache. It's confusion. It's brokenness. It's a rewiring of the very way you perceive love, trust, and yourself. You see, when you discover that someone you trusted has cheated on you, the brain reacts as if it's been hit by a trauma. The same areas that light up during physical pain also light up when you experience emotional betrayal. It's a shock to your system, and your brain doesn't quite know how to process it. It's as if your mind is trying to understand something that goes against all logic, something that doesn't fit with the person you thought you knew. Chemically, the brain becomes flooded with cortisol, the stress hormone. It makes you feel anxious, jittery, almost as if you're in a constant state of fight or flight. The trust you had in the person you loved is shattered, and your brain struggles to rebuild it. But it can't. Not right away. But there's more. When someone cheats, it affects the brain's reward system. The dopamine and oxytocin, the feel-good chemicals you associate with love, are hijacked. And now, the very person who you once found pleasure and security in is the source of pain and betrayal. The brain is left confused, torn between what it once knew as love and what it now recognizes as a wound. Healing from this betrayal isn't just about forgiving the other person. It's about rewiring your brain, learning to trust again, learning to find peace within yourself. The brain needs time to heal, to make sense of what happened, and to restore a sense of safety and security that was lost. But here's the key. While it may take time for your mind to heal, your heart is resilient. You can rebuild, and you can learn to trust again, this time in yourself. You don't have to let someone else's betrayal define your worth or control your capacity for love. And as you lie here tonight, know this. You are more than this moment, more than the pain someone else caused. You are whole. You are worthy. And this betrayal, no matter how deep, will not define you forever. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. When love turns into possession, it starts with care, with affection, with the desire to protect someone you love. But somewhere along the way, that care begins to change. What was once a gentle embrace becomes a suffocating grip. And the love that once felt freeing now feels like a chain, heavy and unyielding. Possessive love doesn't begin with malice. It begins with fear, fear of losing, fear of being replaced, fear of being invisible. And so it tightens its hold, mistaking control for affection, boundaries for betrayal. At first, it feels like a tension, like you're the only one who matters, the one who is cherished beyond measure. But then the lines start to blur. When you want a little space, it feels like rejection. When you seek independence, it feels like abandonment. And the love you once cherished becomes the very thing that confines you. You find yourself questioning, why do I feel guilty for wanting time to myself? Why do I feel trapped when all I wanted was to love freely? And the worst part is, you don't even realize it's happening. It's slow, it's subtle. It's masked by the idea that they care, that they love you so much they can't stand the thought of you slipping away. But here's the truth. True love doesn't control. True love lets you breathe, lets you grow, lets you be who you are without fear of losing you. Because love isn't about holding on so tightly that you forget to let the other person live. When love becomes possession, it ceases to be love. It becomes control, and control is never a foundation for something beautiful. You are not someone's to own. You are your own person, with your own life, your own dreams, and your own right to be free. Tonight, let this be your reminder. Love should lift you, not weigh you down. It should give you room to grow, not make you feel small. And you are worthy of a love that allows you to soar, not one that keeps you grounded in fear. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Attachment styles. Which one are you? We all crave connection. We all seek to be seen, to be understood, to find that quiet place where we are accepted, loved, and valued. But what if the way we approach love is shaped by something deeper, something we've carried from childhood? What if the way we attach to others is built from the patterns we learned long ago? Our attachment style is like a blueprint for our relationships. It's how we connect with others, how we respond to closeness, intimacy, and vulnerability. And whether we realize it or not, it influences everything we do in relationships, from the way we communicate to the way we cope with conflict. There are 4 main attachment styles: secure, anxious, avoidant, and disorganized. Each one comes with its own set of strengths and struggles. A secure attachment style is one where love feels safe. There is trust in both self and others, and emotional intimacy doesn't feel threatening. People with secure attachment are comfortable with closeness and distance. They know how to love without losing themselves in the process. An anxious attachment style, on the other hand, is rooted in a fear of abandonment. It's the kind of love that feels like it might slip through your fingers at any moment. People with this attachment style may feel desperate for reassurance, always wondering if their partner loves them enough, if they're truly secure in the relationship. The fear of being left behind can make everything feel urgent, and they may feel anxious when things feel uncertain. The avoidant attachment style is often built on the fear of being too close. It's the kind of love that keeps a safe distance, that is uncomfortable with vulnerability. People with avoidant attachment may value independence over intimacy, often pulling away when things get too close, believing that emotional distance keeps them safe. And then there's the disorganized attachment style, which can feel like a constant push-pull. It's a combination of both anxious and avoidant tendencies. People with this style often have a deep fear of rejection, but also a fear of being too close. It's like they want love, but they don't know how to trust it, and they often act in ways that contradict their true desires. So, which one are you? Which attachment style defines the way you love? And what does it say about the way you give and receive affection? Knowing your attachment style can be the key to understanding the patterns in your relationships. It can help you see why you might be drawn to certain people, why you may feel anxious or distant, or why you might struggle with intimacy. And once you understand, you can begin to heal the parts of yourself that have been shaped by past wounds. You can begin to love in a way that is more secure, more balanced, more real. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Why anxious people love avoidance. It's a pattern that feels both comforting and painful, like a magnetic pull you can't resist. You, with your heart wide open, craving closeness, needing reassurance, finding yourself drawn to someone who pushes you away. Anxious people crave connection. They yearn for intimacy, for closeness, for a love that feels constant, unshakable. They want to be seen, wanted, heard. But here's the thing. When you have an anxious attachment style, you're often drawn to people who are avoidant, the very ones who keep their distance, who withdraw when things get too close. It's paradoxical, isn't it? How someone who seeks connection can be attracted to someone who pulls away. It's because, deep down, both styles are rooted in the same fear. The fear of vulnerability. Anxious individuals fear abandonment, so they seek closeness in an attempt to fill the void. Avoidants, however, fear engulfment, the loss of their independence in the face of too much closeness. Their way of coping is to pull back, to create space when things feel too intense. And so the cycle begins. The anxious partner feels a constant need for validation and affection. And the avoidant partner feels overwhelmed by it, wanting space, pushing away. The anxious person's need for connection only deepens the avoidant's need for distance. And this push-pull dynamic continues, leaving both partners stuck in a cycle of longing and frustration. But why is this so familiar? Why does this pattern feel so comforting even when it hurts? It's because, often, this dynamic mirrors the relationships we had growing up. The anxious individual may have learned that love is inconsistent, that closeness was only given intermittently, and that they had to chase it to feel secure. The avoidant partner, on the other hand, may have learned that love was smothering, and that independence was the only way to feel safe. This dynamic feels familiar because it's what they know, and sometimes the familiar is harder to escape than the painful. Even though the cycle is destructive, there's comfort in the predictability of it. And so they repeat it over and over again because the pain feels more manageable than the unknown. But there's a quieter truth here. You don't have to stay stuck in this cycle. You can break the pattern. You can find a love that's secure, where both partners are willing to meet each other halfway, where both people are free to love without fear. And when you realize this, you'll see that you deserve more than the push-pull of anxious and avoidant love. You deserve a love that stays, that is steady, that doesn't pull you in, only to push you away again. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Can two insecure people make it work? It's a question that lingers quietly, when both hearts are heavy with doubt, when both people want love, but don't quite know how to give it. Can two insecure souls come together and build something that is strong enough to last? Insecurity, in love, is like a shadow that follows you, no matter how far you run. It's the fear of not being enough, the constant wondering if you're lovable, if you're deserving of the love you seek. And when both partners carry this insecurity, there's a delicate balance that must be found. A balance of needing reassurance without overwhelming the other, of giving love without needing it constantly in return. Two insecure people can build something beautiful, but it requires something very important: a willingness to heal together. Insecurity can't be overcome alone. It must be faced together, with understanding, compassion, and patience. When two insecure people come together, they may find comfort in their shared vulnerability. They may understand each other's fears and doubts more deeply because they share the same wounds. But it's important to remember that this connection alone isn't enough to create a healthy, lasting relationship. Healing takes time. It requires effort, and both people must be willing to do the work, to build trust, to communicate openly, and to grow together. If both partners can be patient with each other and with themselves, then yes, it is possible for two insecure people to find stability. But it requires growth, and it requires each person to learn how to love themselves first before they can love the other fully. Insecurity can only be healed from within, and when both partners learn to support each other's growth, they can create a relationship that is strong enough to weather any storm. But here's the truth. Love is not supposed to be a constant struggle for validation. It should be a space where both people feel safe, seen, and secure. So while two insecure people can work, the real question is, can they both find peace within themselves before they can truly find peace in their relationship? Now, let's move on to the next chapter. The psychology of infatuation. Infatuation is a strange kind of magic. It pulls you in with such force, so intense, so sudden, that it feels like you've been swept into a whirlwind. It's exhilarating. It's intoxicating. And yet, it can be so fleeting. Infatuation makes everything feel bigger. The touch, the words, the moments shared. It makes you see the world through a lens of excitement, where every glance holds meaning, where every smile feels like a promise. But here's the thing. Infatuation isn't the same as love. Love grows slowly. It's steady. It's nurtured over time, with care, attention, and mutual respect. But infatuation is like a firework, bright, dazzling, but short-lived. It burns hot, and just as quickly, it fades. You see, Infatuation is driven by the mind's chemistry. The brain is flooded with dopamine, the feel-good chemical that makes you feel alive, and oxytocin, the hormone that bonds you to another person. It's a chemical high that can feel just like love, but it lacks the depth and foundation that true love has. When we're infatuated, we see the other person as perfect, as the answer to all of our desires. We overlook their flaws, we romanticize their qualities, and we get caught up in the fantasy of them, rather than seeing them for who they truly are. It's easy to fall into the illusion that infatuation is love. But the truth is, infatuation is often more about the feelings it gives us, rather than the person themselves. And this is why infatuation can be so confusing. It can trick you into believing that you found something real, when it's only the beginning of a deeper connection. It makes you believe you're ready for more, when in reality, what you're craving is the excitement, the rush, the intensity. You may want to hold on to that feeling, but it's often not built to last. True love doesn't burn out in a moment, it endures. It's quiet and patient, it's steady in its growth. Infatuation might spark the flame, but love is what keeps it burning, long after the initial spark fades. So, if you're caught in the thrill of infatuation, enjoy the moment, but don't mistake it for the deep, lasting connection that true love brings. Because love is not about the rush. It's about the steady warmth that comes from sharing life together. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Are soulmates real or a social construct? The idea of a soulmate has been around for centuries. The belief that there's one perfect person out there for each of us. A destined connection that goes beyond ordinary love. It's romantic, it's comforting, and it makes us believe that somewhere in the vastness of the world, there's someone who is meant for us. But is that true? Or is the idea of a soulmate simply a story we've been told? A social construct that shapes our desires and expectations of love? In many cultures, the concept of a soulmate is revered. It suggests that love is fated, that there's a person out there who will complete us, who will make us whole. And it's easy to get lost in this ideal. To believe that love should be effortless, that the right person will just click, like a puzzle piece finding its match. But the reality is, love isn't always about finding a perfect fit. It's about connection, growth, and compromise. Love is built over time through shared experiences, and sometimes through overcoming challenges. The idea of a soulmate suggests that love should be instant, but true love takes work. It's not always about finding someone who is already perfect for you, but about growing and evolving together, building something real from shared moments and mutual care. So, are soulmates real? Perhaps in the traditional sense, no. But the deeper truth is, you can have multiple soul connections in your life. People who teach you, shape you, and help you become the best version of yourself. And maybe that's the real beauty of love. It's not about finding one person who is meant for you, but about finding people who show you parts of yourself you never knew existed. People who help you grow and understand the depths of your own heart. Soulmates may not be some cosmic predestined pairing, but love is still magical. Love still transcends time and space in its own way. And perhaps that's all we need to know. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. The hidden fear behind commitment issues commitment. It's a word that carries weight, but for some, it's a word that feels like a chain, a barrier they can't seem to cross. On the surface, commitment looks like a choice. To give yourself fully to someone, to trust them, to share your life. But beneath that choice is a deeper fear, one that often goes unnoticed until it surfaces in unexpected ways. Commitment issues don't always come from a lack of desire for love. In fact, it's often the opposite. A deep yearning for connection, but a fear of what comes with it. The fear of being vulnerable, of giving someone the power to hurt you. The fear that once you commit, you might lose yourself, or that you might find yourself trapped in a relationship that doesn't live up to the ideal. It's easy to think that people with commitment issues are just afraid of being tied down. But the truth is, they are often afraid of being lost. Afraid that their individuality will be consumed by the relationship. That they will no longer be free. No longer able to make choices without considering someone else. It's a deep, quiet fear that once they give their heart, they will never get it back. For some, this fear is rooted in past experiences. Maybe they've been hurt before. Maybe they've seen relationships fall apart. Or maybe they've watched people they love give themselves away, only to be left broken in the end. And so, commitment becomes the thing they avoid, because it feels safer to remain distant, to protect their heart, to keep it guarded. But here's the truth. Real commitment doesn't mean losing yourself. It means choosing to grow together, choosing to trust that love won't take away who you are, but will rather enhance the best parts of you. True commitment is not about being tied down. It's about being free to be yourself, while sharing your life with someone who respects your independence, your dreams, your individuality. Commitment is not a trap. It's a choice to say, I trust you with my heart, and I trust myself enough to love you fully without losing who I am. And that, in itself, is the truest form of freedom. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. How your childhood affects your love life. It's strange how the roots of our childhood remain with us, deep beneath the surface of our adult lives, shaping the way we love, the way we connect, the way we choose. The things we experience when we are young, the love we receive or lack of it, becomes the template for how we navigate relationships later on. If you were raised in a home where love was given freely, where affection was expressed openly, where you were taught to trust and be trusted, then, as an adult, love might feel safe to you. You may naturally give your heart to others with ease, knowing that love is meant to nurture, not harm. But for others, the picture is different. If you grew up in an environment where love was conditional, where you had to earn affection, where emotional neglect or inconsistency left you wondering if you were enough, then love can feel like a battlefield. You may find yourself seeking validation in relationships, feeling like you constantly have to prove your worth, or afraid that any moment of vulnerability will lead to rejection. Your childhood experiences can also shape the way you handle conflict, the way you react when someone withdraws emotionally, or the way you seek closeness. Did your parents communicate openly? Or did they hide their emotions behind closed doors? Did they argue and resolve things, or did they sweep issues under the rug? All of these small moments become patterns in your adult relationships, shaping your ability to express love, to trust, and to resolve conflicts. But here's something powerful. You are not doomed to repeat the patterns of your past. The way you loved as a child does not have to be the way you love as an adult. You can unlearn unhealthy patterns, you can build new ways of connecting, and you can create a love that is different, one that is secure, nurturing, and balanced. Healing begins with awareness. When you understand how your childhood shaped the way you love, you can begin to shift the way you relate to others. You can let go of the old fears, the old wounds, and start building a love that is rooted in trust, respect, and self-worth. It won't be easy, but it will be worth it. You are not defined by the love you received as a child, but by the love you choose to give now. And that love is yours to create. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Why some people sabotage good relationships. It's a strange thing to watch, isn't it? When someone has everything they've been looking for, a love that's steady, a partner who truly cares, someone who is safe and secure, and yet they still find a way to push it all away. They test the limits, create conflict, or even push the person they love to the point of leaving. Why does this happen? Why, when everything seems right, do we sometimes find ourselves sabotaging the very thing we've wanted? It often comes from fear, a fear so deep that it doesn't even make sense on the surface. It's the fear of losing control, the fear that something good can't possibly last, the fear that if we allow ourselves to be loved fully, we might become vulnerable in a way that's unbearable. People who sabotage relationships often have deep-seated insecurities, fears that stem from past experiences, past hurts, or past disappointments. They may have been hurt before, and in order to protect themselves from the pain of loss, they create a situation where they are the one to walk away first. It's not that they don't want love, it's that they're terrified of it. This self-sabotage can show up in many ways. They may create unnecessary drama, push their partner away emotionally, or even start looking for flaws that aren't there. The mind starts telling them, "This can't be real. This can't last. I need to make it fall apart before it hurts more." But the truth is, love that feels too good to be true often feels too good because it is true. The love that is calm, steady, and fulfilling isn't the one you have to run from. It's the one you hold close, you cherish, and you let bloom, free from the chains of fear. And if you recognize this pattern in yourself, know this. It's okay to be afraid. It's okay to have doubts. But you don't have to let fear control you. You deserve love that is steady, love that feels safe, and love that allows you to be vulnerable without the fear of being hurt. And the first step to receiving that love is to stop sabotaging it, to trust yourself, to trust the love you've been given. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. How fear of abandonment shapes adult love. Fear of abandonment is a quiet, deep-rooted ache, a feeling that lingers even in the moments of peace, whispering that you might one day be left behind. It starts early in life, in the absence of security, in the moments when someone you loved wasn't there for you, whether physically, emotionally, or both. And as you grow older, this fear doesn't simply fade away. It attaches itself to the way you love. In relationships, the fear of abandonment can manifest in so many ways. It might make you cling to your partner, holding on a little too tightly, always seeking reassurance, always wondering if they might leave. You might find yourself overcompensating, giving more of yourself than you should. Because deep down, you believe that love is something you have to earn, that if you don't give enough, you might lose them. It also shows up in moments of conflict, when small disagreements trigger feelings of panic, making you believe that any crack in the relationship is a sign that it might shatter completely. You might push your partner away, afraid that if you get too close, they'll leave and break your heart. But the thing is, fear of abandonment doesn't protect you from being left. It just keeps you trapped in a cycle of insecurity, constantly questioning the stability of your relationships, constantly looking for signs of rejection, even when none are there. What if, instead, you allowed yourself to trust? What if you allowed yourself to believe that love doesn't have to be earned through fear? What if you let go of the need for constant validation and simply allowed yourself to be loved just as you are? Love that is built on the foundation of trust doesn't break easily. It isn't fragile or dependent on the fear of loss. It's steady, it's secure, it's unconditional. So, if fear of abandonment has shaped the way you love, know that it's not something you have to carry forever. You don't need to fear being left behind, because the right love will stay, it will grow, and it will choose you, even when you choose yourself first. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Overthinking every text message. The sound of your phone buzzing. A simple notification, a message from someone you care about. But instead of feeling excitement, you feel a rush of anxiety. You unlock your screen, and there it is. Their message, waiting for you to read it, to respond. But now, the mind starts its work. You replay the message over and over, decoding the words, analyzing the tone, wondering if they meant what they said, or if there's something hidden between the lines. Did I say the wrong thing? Did I come on too strong? Should I have waited longer to respond? And before you know it, you've spent hours analyzing a text that would have otherwise been a simple exchange. Overthinking every text message is a way to seek control, to make sure that nothing slips through your fingers, to ensure that nothing is misunderstood. But what you don't realize is that in trying to control the narrative, you're losing the spontaneity of connection. You're turning something simple into something complicated, and with each analysis, you create more space for doubt. And it's not just about the words. It's about the silence between them. The time it takes for them to reply, the lack of emojis, the use of a period instead of an exclamation mark. Every pause becomes a question. Every lack of immediate response becomes a sign of something wrong. And so you find yourself spiraling, asking yourself what went wrong, why they haven't texted you back yet. But here's something important. Not everything needs to be analyzed. Not everything needs to be deciphered. Sometimes a message is just a message. A conversation doesn't need to be broken down, because true connection isn't built on perfect words. It's built on trust, on presence, on shared moments. If you find yourself overthinking, take a step back. Breathe. Allow yourself the freedom to let things unfold without the weight of constant analysis. Love doesn't need to be understood at every turn. Sometimes it just needs to be felt. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. The loop of replaying arguments in your head. It starts almost imperceptibly, like a quiet echo, something you can't quite shake. A word, a sentence, a look exchanged in a moment of anger. And suddenly, it's all you can hear, all you can see. You replay the argument over and over in your mind, examining every word you said, every word they said, wondering where it all went wrong. It's exhausting, isn't it? The constant replaying of conversations, the way the anger, the frustration, the hurt rises again each time you think about it. You try to find the perfect response you should have given, the perfect way to defend yourself, to explain yourself. But no matter how many times you run through it, the argument remains the same. Stuck in a loop, repeated in your head, without resolution. Why does this happen? Why can't you let go of something that's already passed? It's because the mind is looking for closure, looking for the satisfaction of having the last word, of winning the argument. And because we can't go back and change what happened, the mind keeps replaying the situation, hoping that this time we'll find the right words, the right way to make it all make sense. But here's something important to remember. Arguments don't need to be won to be resolved. Sometimes there's no perfect ending, no perfect explanation. Healing comes when you allow yourself to move on, when you stop clinging to the need for closure and accept that it's already done. You can't change the past, but you can change how it affects you now. You can choose to let it go, to free yourself from the loop of replays, and to find peace in the present. So, when the argument replays in your head, pause, breathe, let the thought pass without holding on to it. It's not the argument that defines you, but how you choose to heal from it. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Why we fantasize about fixing someone. There's something deeply human about wanting to help others, to ease their pain, to see them rise above their struggles. And sometimes, that desire to help takes on a life of its own. It becomes a fantasy. We imagine that if we love someone enough, if we give enough, we can fix them. We can heal their wounds, restore their confidence, and turn them into the person we want them to be. But here's the truth. We can't fix anyone. Not truly. No matter how much love we pour into someone, it can never be a cure for their inner turmoil, their past, or their emotional scars. The idea that we can fix someone is built on the assumption that they're broken. And that's where the problem lies. No one is broken. No one is beyond repair. But healing is something that must come from within. The desire to fix someone often stems from a deep need to feel needed, to feel that our love has purpose, that it can change someone's life. It's the longing to save, to be the hero in their story. But the truth is, love is not about saving. It's about supporting. It's about being there while they do the hard work themselves, while they face their demons, while they learn to heal and grow. When we fantasize about fixing someone, we're often avoiding the reality that we cannot control their journey. We cannot dictate how they heal or when they will be ready to change. We also forget that in the process of trying to fix someone, we often lose ourselves. We give so much of ourselves to their struggles that we forget to tend to our own hearts. The real strength in love lies in accepting others as they are, with all their flaws, their pain, and their complexities. It's not about changing them, but about loving them without the expectation of transformation. True love doesn't need fixing. It needs understanding. It needs patience. It needs the willingness to stand by, to be a steady presence while they find their own way. You are not responsible for fixing anyone. You are responsible for loving, for nurturing, for growing together. But you cannot heal someone who isn't ready to heal themselves. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Emotional projection. Are you seeing them or yourself? Have you ever looked at someone and seen not who they truly are, but who you believe them to be? Have you ever found yourself projecting your own feelings, fears, or desires onto someone else, only to be blindsided when they don't react the way you expected? It's a quiet trap, this emotional projection. And it's something we all do, whether we realize it or not. When we project, we're not seeing the person in front of us for who they truly are. We're seeing them through the lens of our own emotions, our past experiences, our desires. We project our insecurities, our unmet needs, our fears. And suddenly, we're not relating to the person, but to the story we've created in our minds. For example, if you've been hurt before, you might project that fear of betrayal onto your partner, even when they haven't done anything wrong. You might interpret their silence as rejection, their desire for independence as abandonment, because it triggers something deep inside of you. Something unresolved, something from your past. Emotional projection often stems from our own unmet needs. We expect others to fill gaps within us, whether it's our need for validation, love, or security. And when they don't, we interpret it as a sign of personal failure. Rather than recognizing that the need is ours to fill, This projection creates conflict because it distorts reality. It makes us see the world not as it is, but as we fear it to be. We find ourselves misinterpreting the actions of others, believing they are a reflection of our own wounds, when in reality, they may not be. But here's the quiet gift of awareness. Once you recognize that you're projecting, you can begin to step back. You can see the other person for who they really are, without the shadow of your fears or desires clouding your view. You can love them for their true self, not for the story you've attached to them. And when you do that, you open the door to more authentic, real connections. So, the next time you feel that rush of emotions, that quick judgment, ask yourself, am I seeing them, or am I seeing myself in them? And remember, love begins with seeing the other person clearly, not through the lens of your own fears. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Codependency. When helping becomes enabling. It starts with care, doesn't it? The desire to help someone you love, to be there for them when they're struggling. But somewhere along the way, that help becomes more than just a gesture of love. It becomes a necessity for both of you. Codependency creeps in when one person begins to rely on the other for emotional support, validation, and even their sense of self-worth. What starts as a desire to be supportive turns into a relationship dynamic where one person's happiness becomes entirely dependent on the other. And it's easy to get lost in this cycle. You begin to think, if I don't do this, they'll fall apart. If I don't step in, they'll never get better. But the truth is, the more you help, the less you allow the other person to help themselves. And that's where the danger lies. Codependency is built on a foundation of fear, fear of abandonment, fear of not being needed, fear of being alone. And when you begin to feel like your worth is defined by how much you do for someone else, you lose sight of your own needs. You start to give pieces of yourself away, thinking that if you give enough, you'll make them whole. But here's the quiet truth. You can't make someone whole if they don't want to heal themselves. You can't fill someone else's void while neglecting your own. Love is not about being the crutch that someone leans on forever. It's about being partners in growth, encouraging each other to become stronger, to become whole on your own, and to bring that wholeness into the relationship. Helping becomes enabling when it prevents the other person from taking responsibility for their own life. It's when your actions are no longer helping them grow, but instead allowing them to remain stuck in a cycle of dependency. Real love doesn't keep you trapped. It lifts you up. It empowers you to stand on your own, while still being there to lean on when necessary. So, if you find yourself stuck in a codependent pattern, take a moment to reflect. Ask yourself, am I truly helping them? Or am I enabling their reliance on me? You are worthy of love that doesn't make you lose yourself. You are worthy of relationships where both people stand as equals, not as one giving everything while the other takes. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. The desire to be chosen and its roots. There's a deep yearning in all of us, isn't there? A desire to feel special, to feel seen, to be chosen. It's a longing that goes beyond just being loved. It's the feeling that someone sees you, chooses you, and says, out of everyone, it's you I want. It feels validating, comforting, as if you are worthy of love, worthy of being picked, above all others. But where does this desire come from? Why does it feel so crucial to be chosen, as if being chosen somehow proves your worth? At the heart of it, the desire to be chosen often stems from childhood. It's rooted in the need to feel loved and secure, to know that someone has picked you. that you are important enough to be noticed. In relationships, this desire can manifest as a need for constant validation, for reassurance that you are loved, that you are the one, and that you will never be abandoned. But it's important to recognize that this need for reassurance is often tied to a deeper fear, the fear of not being good enough, the fear of being left behind, the fear that if you aren't chosen, it means you're unworthy. The truth is, you don't need to be chosen by someone else to feel worthy. Your worth doesn't depend on someone else's affirmation. You are already whole. You are already valuable. And you don't need someone else to pick you to prove that. When you love yourself fully, when you understand your own worth, you no longer need to rely on others to choose you. You choose yourself first. You trust yourself. And when you love yourself, the love you receive from others becomes a beautiful addition, not a necessity. You don't need to be chosen, because you have already chosen yourself. And that is the truest form of love. The love that starts from within and radiates outward. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Emotional labor and the burden of caring. Too much caring for someone is a beautiful thing, isn't it? It's a form of love, of devotion, of giving. But sometimes, in the act of caring, we lose ourselves. We become so wrapped up in the needs of others, so focused on keeping their world together, that we forget to take care of our own heart, our own needs. Emotional labor is often invisible. It's not the physical tasks that need to be done, but the emotional work, the listening, the comforting, the understanding, the constant effort to make someone else feel heard and valued. It's the mental and emotional energy you pour into someone else's well-being, and it can be exhausting. When you care too much, you may find yourself taking on the weight of another person's emotions, shouldering their worries, their pain, as if it's your responsibility to fix it. You listen to their problems, you try to solve them, you console them, and in doing so, you slowly drain your own emotional reserves. But here's the truth. You cannot pour from an empty cup. You cannot give endlessly without caring for yourself. True love is not about self-sacrifice. It's about balance. It's about being there for someone else, while still giving yourself permission to rest, to recharge, and to take care of your own heart. Emotional labor is important, but it should never be a one-way street. It's okay to care. It's okay to give. But you must also receive. You must also allow others to share the load. And you must learn to set boundaries, to protect your own emotional well-being, because you are deserving of that care too. You don't have to carry the world on your shoulders, even for the people you love. You deserve to be loved in a way that nurtures you, in a way that respects your emotional needs, and that gives as much as it takes. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Is it love or validation you're chasing? There's a difference, isn't there? A quiet difference between the feeling of love and the desire for validation. Love fills you up, it nourishes you, it helps you grow. But validation is a temporary high, a fleeting sense of worth that comes from someone else's approval. At its core, the desire for validation isn't about the other person. It's about your own insecurities, your own longing to feel important, to feel seen, to feel like you matter. When we seek validation, we look for external affirmation that we are worthy of love, worthy of attention, worthy of belonging. And yet, it's easy to get caught in this cycle, isn't it? To confuse love with the feeling of being validated. We crave affection, compliments, attention, because in those moments, we feel seen. We feel valued. But what happens when that validation fades? What happens when the compliments stop, when the attention shifts elsewhere? We start to question ourselves. We start to wonder if we are still worthy, if we are still loved. Because deep down, we haven't learned to give that validation to ourselves first. We rely on others to fill the gaps that only we can truly heal. Love, true love, doesn't need constant validation. It is built on mutual respect, trust, and care. It doesn't demand constant affirmations to feel secure. Instead, it flourishes in the spaces where both people are secure in themselves, where both partners are whole, and the love they share is not about proving their worth, but about enriching each other's lives. So, if you find yourself chasing validation in your relationships, ask yourself this: am I loving this person because I genuinely care for them? Or am I loving them because they make me feel good about myself? Real love isn't about finding someone to validate your worth. It's about finding someone who sees you for who you truly are and loves you. Not for your need to be validated, but for the person you already are. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Self-sabotage. When you push people away, it's a strange thing, this desire to push away the very love you crave, to feel the warmth of connection and yet, instinctively, to turn away, to create distance, to protect yourself from what you fear most. Vulnerability. Self-sabotage often feels like an invisible force, one that pulls you back when you're about to move forward. It's the quiet voice that tells you, don't get too close, they'll hurt you. Don't let them in, they'll leave anyway. And so, even when love is right in front of you, you build walls. You keep your distance. You say things you don't mean. You create problems where there are none. And all the while, you wonder why love never feels secure, never feels safe. The root of self-sabotage often lies in fear. Fear of being rejected. Fear of being abandoned. Fear of being vulnerable. And so, you do what feels safest. You push people away before they can hurt you. It's not that you don't want love. It's that you don't know how to let it in without the fear that it will disappear. But here's a quiet truth. By pushing people away, you're not protecting yourself. You're only making yourself feel more alone, more isolated, more distant from the very connection you crave. And in that distance, you miss the opportunity for love to grow. You miss the chance to truly be seen and accepted for who you are, with all your flaws, all your imperfections. Love is not meant to be a source of fear. True love doesn't disappear at the first sign of vulnerability. It grows through it. It strengthens through the willingness to show your true self. And in allowing love to come in letting your guard down just enough to be real, you create the space for something beautiful to take root. So, if you find yourself pushing away the very love you seek, ask yourself, what am I afraid of? What am I protecting myself from? And remember, you deserve love that sees you, that accepts you, and that will not leave, even when you show your most vulnerable self. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Why you keep dating the same type. There's a curious thing about patterns. How we find ourselves drawn to the same kind of people time and time again, even when we tell ourselves that we want something different. It's like a magnetic pull. You think you're making a new choice, but somehow you end up in the same place, with the same type of person, facing the same challenges, the same unresolved emotions. But why does this happen? Why do we keep dating the same type, even when it hasn't worked out before? It often comes down to comfort. There's something familiar about certain types of people, even when that familiarity has led to heartache. It's the subconscious mind that remembers. not the rational part of you. The subconscious chooses what feels safe, what feels known, even if it's not healthy. And so you find yourself attracted to people who mirror past experiences, whether it's the thrill of drama, the intensity of passion, or the echoes of old patterns that you're unknowingly recreating. But here's a quiet truth. You don't have to repeat these patterns. You can break free from the type you've always chosen by shifting your perspective, by understanding that the familiar is not always the right choice. You are not destined to keep making the same decisions. You have the power to recognize your patterns and change the course of your relationships. It's not about finding someone who looks different on the outside. It's about looking inward and asking yourself why you're drawn to what you're drawn to. What part of you is seeking validation, comfort, or security through the same patterns? And what would it look like to choose a relationship built on true connection rather than the comfort of familiarity? Breaking free from these cycles takes awareness. It takes a willingness to face the patterns you've been repeating. But once you recognize them, you can choose love based on growth, not repetition. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Breaking generational patterns in love. Generational patterns are like invisible threads woven through our families, passed down from one generation to the next. We inherit the ways our parents loved, the ways they fought, the ways they expressed affection. And sometimes, we don't even realize that we are living the same patterns, making the same mistakes, until it's too late. These patterns are often born from unhealed wounds. Perhaps it was a lack of emotional expression in your household, a history of betrayal, or the absence of secure attachment. But as children, we take these lessons, we internalize them, and they become part of how we understand love. And so, we repeat them, unaware that we're walking down the same path our parents walked before us. But here's the truth. Just because something has been passed down doesn't mean it has to continue. You have the power to break these cycles, to heal the wounds that were left unaddressed, and to create new patterns that serve you, that serve the love you want to build. Breaking generational patterns in love starts with awareness. It starts with recognizing the patterns you've inherited, the way you seek validation in unhealthy places, the way you avoid vulnerability, or the way you hold on to love that doesn't serve you. Once you see these patterns, you can consciously choose to change them. It takes work. It takes forgiveness. Not just for others, but for yourself. Forgiving the past, forgiving the people who couldn't love in ways you needed, and understanding that you are not doomed to repeat their mistakes. And once you make the choice to break the cycle, you can create a new legacy of love. A love that is healthy, secure, and free from the burdens of past generations. You can choose to love in a way that is not defined by the past, but by the person you are today, and by the future you want to create. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. The need for drama. Addiction to chaos. There's something oddly magnetic about chaos, isn't there? The thrill of unpredictability, the rush of emotions that feel intense and real. In relationships, this need for drama can creep in slowly, until one day you realize that peace feels foreign, and you're drawn to the chaos like it's the only way to feel alive. At first, it may seem exhilarating. The highs, the lows, the passion, the fights that bring a storm of emotion, only to be followed by a calm, almost euphoric reconciliation. You feel alive in these moments. You feel seen. You feel wanted. But over time, this chaos becomes an addiction. You crave it because it gives you something that feels real, something that feels alive. But deep down, you know it's never stable. never fulfilling in the way true love should be. The need for drama often stems from unresolved wounds, a need for excitement, for validation, or simply the familiarity of conflict. For some, growing up in chaotic environments makes chaos feel normal. You start to believe that love must be tumultuous to be meaningful, that if it's calm, then it's not real. You might seek out drama because it fills a void that is too quiet, too empty without the rush of emotional highs and lows. But here's the thing. Love that is built on drama is not love at all. It's an emotional roller coaster that leaves you exhausted, confused, and emotionally drained. True love is steady. It's secure. It's a place where both people feel safe to grow, without the constant cycle of fights and reconciliations. If you find yourself addicted to chaos, take a moment to ask why. Why do you seek out the ups and downs? What part of you needs the drama to feel alive, to feel worthy, to feel seen? The truth is, you don't need chaos to feel real. You don't need drama to feel alive. What you need is peace. What you need is consistency. What you need is a love that isn't defined by the extremes, but by the calm. True love is quiet. It's a safe space between the storms, where both people can rest in each other and build something steady. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Do you love the person or the pattern? It's a question that can make your heart stop for a moment, because sometimes we get so lost in the rhythm of a relationship, in the dance of emotions, that we forget to ask, am I really in love with this person? Or am I in love with the pattern we've created? Love, at its core, is about connection, true, deep connection with another soul. But patterns? Patterns are the stories we create, the roles we fall into, the cycles we repeat, often without realizing it. When we get used to a certain dynamic in a relationship, when the highs and lows become so familiar, it can become harder to distinguish between the person we're with and the role they play in our emotional world. Do you love the real them? Or do you love the way they make you feel in the moments of conflict? Or the way they offer you comfort after a struggle? It's easy to mistake the comfort of familiarity for love, to mistake the intensity of drama for passion. But true love isn't about repeating old patterns. It's about embracing who the other person really is, not just the role they play in your emotional cycle. It's about loving the individual, not the story they help you tell. And it's about seeing them for who they truly are, not for the pattern you've fallen into. If you find yourself stuck in unhealthy patterns of fighting, making up, getting distant, or depending on someone for validation, ask yourself, do I love this person? Or am I addicted to the way they fit into the cycle I've created? Love should feel freeing, not like a script you're stuck acting out. True love allows you to grow, to be seen, to be known without the need to fit into old, familiar patterns. When you fall in love with the person, not the pattern, you're free to build something real, something steady, something that doesn't depend on drama or repetition. And in that space, love is free to bloom, without the weight of the past dragging it down. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. How we repeat childhood in adult relationships. It's a curious thing, isn't it? How the echoes of our childhood can follow us into adulthood, shaping the way we love, the way we connect, the way we interact in relationships. We may think we're creating something new, something fresh, but sometimes we're simply repeating the patterns we learned when we were young. When we are children, we observe the dynamics around us. We watch how our parents or caregivers interact, how they express love, how they argue, how they comfort. We learn from their example, whether we realize it or not. And these lessons become the framework for how we show up in our own relationships. If we grew up in a home where love felt conditional, where affection was withheld or given only after a fight, we might find ourselves unconsciously repeating that pattern in our adult relationships. We may chase affection. We may find ourselves in relationships that feel inconsistent, where love feels unstable, because that's what we learned love should be. If our childhood was filled with emotional neglect or coldness, we might find ourselves drawn to people who don't show up emotionally because, in a strange way, it feels familiar. We might seek out the very relationships that mirror our past, believing that this is the only way love is supposed to look. But here's the truth. You don't have to live out your childhood patterns forever. You are not bound by what you learned as a child. You have the power to break free from these unconscious cycles, to choose a new way to love, to heal the wounds that were created in the past. It starts with awareness. It starts with recognizing the ways in which your past influences your present. When you start to see the patterns, you can begin to unlearn them. You can learn to love in a way that is not dictated by old wounds, but by the person you are today. True love isn't about repeating the past. It's about creating something new, something healthy, something that honors both who you are and who your partner is, without the weight of old lessons holding you back. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. The comfort of familiar pain. There's something strange about pain, especially the kind that feels familiar. It's almost like an old, worn-out sweater, something you've worn so many times that it's shaped itself to fit perfectly, no matter how uncomfortable it might be. For many, familiar pain becomes a source of comfort, not because it's pleasurable, but because it's known. It's predictable. You've lived with it for so long that its presence feels almost safe. And when something new comes along, something free of that pain, it can feel unsettling. You don't know how to act, how to feel, or whether it will last. Why do we do this? Why do we hold on to pain, even when it hurts us? It's because, in a way, pain becomes part of our identity. It becomes the lens through which we see the world, the filter through which we experience love, connection, and even ourselves. We start to believe that we don't deserve anything better, or that love is only real when it comes with a price. The comfort of familiar pain can also keep us from healing. It keeps us stuck in old patterns, in relationships that drain us, in emotional cycles that repeat over and over. And though we might consciously want to break free, there's a part of us that holds on to the very pain that we long to escape. But here's the quiet truth. You are worthy of peace. You are worthy of love that doesn't come with strings attached, with expectations that leave you empty. You deserve love that nurtures you, that lifts you up, that feels safe. Not like an old wound that keeps reopening. Breaking free from the comfort of familiar pain is not easy. It takes courage. It takes the willingness to step into the unknown, to embrace a kind of love that is quiet, steady, and secure, even if it doesn't feel as exciting as the chaos you've been used to. But this is the love you deserve. The love that heals. The love that nurtures. The love that allows you to finally take off that old sweater and step into something new. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. The loop of fix, fight, forgive. There's a pattern that many of us fall into without realizing it. A loop that feels like a constant cycle of ups and downs, a rhythm that moves from fixing to fighting, and then back to forgiveness. It's exhausting, isn't it? You find yourself stuck in this emotional whirlpool, trying to repair the damage caused by an argument, only to end up fighting again, only to find yourself forgiving once more, with no real resolution. It often starts with a disagreement, a difference of opinion, or something small that gets blown out of proportion. Emotions flare, words are exchanged, and before you know it, you're in the middle of a full-blown argument. In that moment, it feels like the end of the world, like everything is falling apart. But then, the cycle begins to shift. The tension fades, and the urge to fix the relationship kicks in. You apologize, you make up, you say the things that are needed to restore peace. And for a while, everything feels okay again. The bond is reestablished, the wounds are covered up, and you're back to that feeling of closeness. But before long, the cycle repeats. A small issue arises, emotions build up again, and you find yourself fighting, and fighting, only to forgive once more. And the cycle continues, round and round, with no real healing, no true resolution. This loop is often rooted in the fear of losing the connection. When you care deeply for someone, the thought of conflict tearing you apart is unbearable. So you fix, you fight, you forgive, over and over, thinking that each time it will make things better. When in reality, it only keeps you stuck in a pattern that prevents true growth. True healing doesn't come from repeating the cycle. It comes from addressing the root of the issues. From learning to communicate honestly, from setting boundaries, from understanding that love isn't just about fixing things. It's about growing together. It's about acknowledging that conflict is natural, but it doesn't have to define your relationship. Real love doesn't live in the loop of constant fixes and forgiveness. It lives in the space of understanding, growth, and the ability to move through challenges without losing sight of who you are, together. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Craving closure from people who can't give it closure. It's that elusive feeling, the finality that we crave when something important in our life ends, whether it's a relationship, a friendship, or even a chapter in our personal story. We want the answers, the why, the explanation that will make it all make sense, that will somehow ease the ache and bring us peace. But what happens when the person who could give you that closure is the one who is no longer there? Or worse, when they can't give it, no matter how much you need it? We all know the feeling of reaching for something, answers, understanding, closure, and finding it just out of reach. It's the open-ended text message, the unanswered question, the "I'm sorry" that never came. And we spend our time, our energy, our thoughts, chasing something we may never get. We think that if we just understand why, we will be able to move on. If only they could explain, if only they could give us the peace we crave, we could heal. But here's the hard truth. Some people can't give you closure, not because they don't care, but because they themselves don't have the answers. Maybe they don't understand their own actions. Maybe they are too afraid to face the truth. Or maybe they simply don't have the emotional tools to offer you what you need. And sometimes, closure isn't something they can give you, because it's something you must find within yourself. You have the power to create your own closure. It may not come from the person who hurt you, but it can come from your own heart. It comes from accepting that you may never know the full story, but choosing to let go anyway. It comes from deciding that you no longer need their explanations to move forward, that you are worthy of peace, regardless of whether or not they provide the answers you seek. Letting go of the need for closure is one of the hardest things to do, but it's also one of the most freeing. You are not bound to someone else's actions. You are not defined by their inability to give you what you need. Your healing is in your own hands. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. A story about falling for the wrong person. It's easy to fall for someone. It's easy to let your heart get swept away by their smile, their words, the way they make you feel in those quiet moments when it seems like you're the only two people in the world. But sometimes, despite all the chemistry, despite all the connection, you realize too late that they weren't the right person for you. It starts slowly, doesn't it? You ignore the red flags, convincing yourself that they're not as important as the way they make you feel. You believe the promises. You believe the sweetness. You believe the story you've woven in your head. But somewhere in the back of your mind, you know that something isn't quite right. You know that their actions don't match their words, that the love they give is inconsistent, that the relationship feels one-sided. But it's hard to admit, isn't it? It's hard to accept that you've fallen for the wrong person, that all the effort you put in, all the love you gave, wasn't enough to create the connection you were hoping for. And so, you stay. You stay. Because leaving feels harder than staying. You stay because you've invested so much time and energy. You stay because you believe that somehow, if you love them enough, things will change. But the truth is, falling for the wrong person doesn't just hurt your heart. It drains your spirit. It leaves you questioning yourself, wondering if you were wrong to trust your instincts, wondering if love is supposed to feel so heavy, so full of doubts. You find yourself pouring your energy into something that is not reciprocal, not healthy, not what you truly need. But here's the quiet truth. It's okay to fall for the wrong person. It's part of the journey. It's part of learning who you are and what you need in a relationship. Because when you fall for the wrong person, you learn how to recognize the right one. You learn what boundaries need to be set, what values need to be shared, and what love should truly feel like. A love that is steady, nurturing, and free from the weight of uncertainty. And when you finally let go, when you stop chasing something that isn't meant for you, you make space for the love that is. You make space for the person who will choose you, not because you've convinced them to, but because they see you for who you truly are, and they want to build a life together. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. An honest letter to your younger self, dear younger me. I know you're scared right now. I know you feel lost at times, like the world is bigger than you can handle, like love is something you have to chase after, something you have to earn. But I want you to know that you are already enough, just as you are. You'll spend so much time doubting yourself, wondering if you're good enough, wondering if you'll ever truly be seen, if you'll ever be loved in the way you deserve. You'll feel the weight of mistakes you think you've made, and you'll carry the fear of failure with you like a heavy coat. But listen, none of it is as important as you think it is. You will fall, you will stumble, and sometimes you will feel like you're too broken to fix. But I need you to remember something. Every fall is an opportunity to rise. Every mistake is a lesson in disguise. You don't need to have it all figured out right now. You don't need to rush. You don't need to chase after validation from anyone else. You only need to love yourself and trust that the right things will fall into place. You will love deeply, and sometimes that love won't be returned in the way you expect. You'll try to fix people, and sometimes you'll lose yourself in the process. But please, know this. Your worth is not dependent on anyone else's love. You are already whole. There will be days when you'll feel like you're not enough, like the world is too harsh, too cold. But remember, the strength to get through it is already inside of you. You are stronger than you know, and the love you seek is already within you. You just have to recognize it. Don't be afraid of being alone. Because in solitude, you will find yourself. You will discover parts of you that are hidden, that are waiting to shine. And when the right people come into your life, they will see you for who you truly are, not who you pretend to be, not who you think they want you to be, but your true self, the one who is worthy of love, worthy of happiness. So, take a deep breath. Trust the journey. You are enough, and you always have been. With all the love in my heart, your older self. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. What if you never texted them back? What if, in the quiet stillness of your mind, you never sent that text? What if you never reached out, never made the first move, never poured your heart into words that you knew might never be returned? What if you let that moment slip by, without trying to fix things, without trying to reach them, without seeking the closure that felt like it was slipping through your fingers? In those moments, there's a certain power in restraint, in silence, the need to text, to reach out, to fix things. It often comes from a place of desperation, a need to feel heard, to feel understood. But what if, by not texting, you allowed the silence to speak for itself? What if you stopped chasing after a connection that might never fully be returned? What if, by not texting them back, you took back control of your own peace? You stopped waiting for someone else to validate your feelings, stopped placing the responsibility for your happiness in their hands. In that moment, you would choose yourself. You would choose to release the need for external reassurance, to stop waiting for a message that might never come. And you would give yourself the freedom to heal, to move forward without the weight of someone else's absence on your shoulders. Not texting them back doesn't mean you don't care. It simply means you are no longer willing to sacrifice your own peace for the hope of something uncertain. It means you're letting go of the expectation, the need, and instead, you're trusting that the right connections will come without the effort of forcing them. So ask yourself, what would it look like if you never texted them back? What would it feel like to take back that space, that energy, that emotional investment? What if you allowed the silence to be the answer you've been waiting for all along? Now, let's move on to the next chapter. A dream where you never let go. In the stillness of sleep, there's a place where the heart doesn't know how to let go. A place where dreams pull you back into memories, where the warmth of a past love feels so real, so present, that it's as if you never had to say goodbye. In this dream, you hold on tight. Not because you want to, but because something deep inside you still craves the connection, the comfort, the feeling of being needed. It's the dream where you don't let go of the hand that once held yours, the embrace that once kept you safe, the smile that once lit up your world. But here's the thing. In dreams, we create the stories we wish we could live. In dreams, we rewrite the past, we erase the pain, we change the endings. And in this dream, you never let go. But the truth is, the past was meant to stay there. Letting go is not just an act of release. It's an act of healing. It's recognizing that the love you once held on to was beautiful for a time, but it was never meant to define your future. And in your waking hours, you realize that even though the dream feels comforting, you are stronger now. And the love you seek is one that will help you grow, not one that keeps you holding on to a ghost. In the dream, it feels easier to keep holding on. The pain of letting go seems too big, too heavy. But in reality, you are already free. You are free from the need to hold on to something that is no longer yours. Free to make space for the love that is meant for you. The love that isn't bound by memory, but by possibility. And when you wake, you realize that even though you never let go in the dream, in the real world, you are letting go, bit by bit, in the way that only healing can allow. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. The one that got away. A nighttime reflection. There's a quiet ache that lingers in the heart, a name you whisper to yourself in the silence of the night. The one that got away. The one who was once so close, so vivid, so real. And yet, somehow, they slipped through your fingers. In the quiet of the evening, when the world slows down and the noise fades away, your mind drifts back to them, to the moments you shared, to the dreams you once painted together. You wonder what could have been if things had gone differently, if the timing had been just right, if you had held on a little longer. And in these reflections, it's easy to romanticize what you had, to idealize the connection, to make them out to be the one that could have changed everything. But here's the thing. The one that got away wasn't perfect. They were a person, just like anyone else, with flaws, with fears, with imperfections. We often hold on to the memory of someone because it represents what we lost, what we couldn't hold on to, what we feel we still need. But sometimes, the one that got away wasn't meant to stay. They were part of a chapter, a lesson, a turning point. And while the memory of them may bring bittersweet comfort, it doesn't mean that they were the love you needed, or that their absence means you'll never find something equally as beautiful. You see, the truth is, the one that got away is not a ghost you need to chase. They are a part of your story, but they don't define the ending. The love you are meant to have is still out there, waiting for you to stop looking backward and start looking forward. And tonight, as you reflect on the one that got away, remember this. Sometimes, letting go is not about losing something. It's about making room for the love that is meant to stay. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. A tale of unsent messages. There's a message you never sent, sitting quietly in your drafts, waiting for the moment when you might decide to release it. It's a message full of things you couldn't say in person, full of emotions you couldn't fully express. Because, in that moment, you knew it wasn't the right time. Maybe it was the message you never sent because you were afraid of rejection. Maybe it was the words that were too raw, too vulnerable, too honest for a world that might not be ready for them. Or maybe it was the message you kept writing and rewriting, changing the words, adjusting the tone, until eventually it became a letter to yourself. A letter you never intended for anyone else to read. But here's the thing. Unsent messages are powerful because they capture everything that's been left unsaid. They hold all the words that your heart needed to express, but your mind wasn't ready to release. They are the secret conversations, the ones that never happen, but are still so important. In a way, these messages are more than just words. They are the unsung stories of who you are, who you were, and the part of you that was too afraid to show the world. What's interesting about unsent messages is that they don't always need to be sent to have value. Sometimes they are meant to stay in the drafts, hidden in the quiet places where only you can read them. They are reminders that you are allowed to feel deeply, that you are allowed to have thoughts that don't need to be shared with anyone else. And yet, as you read them, you may realize something. The message itself may no longer be important. It's the act of writing it, of giving yourself permission to express what's inside, that makes it meaningful. There's beauty in letting things remain unsaid, in knowing when to keep something just for yourself. And while the words might never be delivered, the feeling they carry is something you'll always carry with you. A reminder that your voice matters, whether it's heard by others or not. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. A love that only existed in your mind. It's the kind of love that never truly had a chance. But it feels so real, doesn't it? You build it in your mind, piece by piece, from the moments you shared, from the words you wished they had said, from the way you imagined things could have been. It's a love that exists only in your daydreams, but it fills your heart in a way that makes it feel like it was real. You start to live in the idea of them, the version of them that exists in your head, the one you've shaped and sculpted to fit your dreams. You replay every interaction, every glance, every word, and you imagine what could have been if only circumstances had been different. You build a world where this love exists, where everything falls perfectly into place, and you begin to believe in it, even though it was never truly there. But here's the reality. The love you're holding on to isn't a love at all. It's a fantasy, a story you've created based on your desires, your longing, your need for connection. And while it feels comforting, it's also a trap. Because you can't hold on to something that was never real. And in doing so, you risk missing out on the love that could actually be real, the love that is imperfect, the love that requires vulnerability and presence, not just imagination. Sometimes we hold on to these imagined loves because they're safer. They don't require us to risk our hearts. They don't ask us to face rejection. They don't challenge us in the ways real love does. But the truth is, real love is messy. It's unpredictable. It's full of both joy and pain. And when you let go of the love that only exists in your mind, you make room for the kind of love that is flawed, but true. The kind of love that grows in the space where two people meet, not just where one person imagines. So, let go of the fantasy. Release the love that never had a chance, and open your heart to the possibility of something that is real, something that is imperfect, but also something that can grow. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Whispered confessions from a toxic relationship. There are things we never say aloud, things we keep buried deep inside. Whispered confessions we're too afraid to voice. In toxic relationships, these confessions are the silent truths we ignore, the things we know but refuse to admit. Because admitting them would mean acknowledging the hurt, the damage, the way we've allowed ourselves to be caught in a cycle of pain. You might confess to yourself, in the quiet of the night, that you knew something was wrong, that the love you thought you were building was really a mirage, a mask hiding emotional manipulation, control, or indifference. You might whisper to yourself that you've allowed too much, let too many things slide because you didn't know how to stop, how to walk away from the promise of something better, even when you saw the cracks. You knew the warnings. You felt the moments when you were dismissed, when your needs were ignored, when love was conditional. But you kept telling yourself it was worth fighting for. The confessions in your heart are those of self-doubt, wondering why you stayed so long, why you accepted less than you deserved, why you believed the lies, why you allowed yourself to be gaslighted, why you convinced yourself that things would change. But here's the thing. These whispered confessions don't define you. The mistakes you made in the relationship don't define you. The love you thought you had doesn't define you. What defines you is your ability to rise from the ashes, to heal, to learn, and to choose a better path. One that is free from toxicity, one where love is not about manipulation or control, but about trust, respect, and true connection. It's hard to admit that you were in a toxic relationship. It's painful to look at yourself and acknowledge the ways you've been hurt, the ways you allowed yourself to be diminished. But in doing so, you find the strength to move forward. You find the courage to choose yourself, to step away from what was never meant to be, and to create the love you truly deserve. The kind of love that sees you fully, without judgment, without harm. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. The day you finally chose yourself. There comes a moment, a quiet, transformative moment, when you realize that enough is enough. The weight of the world, the endless giving of yourself, the constant search for validation from others, it all becomes too heavy to carry. And in that moment, something shifts inside of you. You take a deep breath, and for the first time in a long time, you choose yourself. It's not dramatic. It's not loud. It's not a grand declaration to the world. It's a subtle shift, a quiet decision that starts within. You stop looking outward for the love, the approval, the recognition you've been desperately seeking. Instead, you turn inward, and you give yourself the love you've been withholding for so long. You choose to stop sacrificing your peace, your happiness, your well-being for others who couldn't do the same for you. Choosing yourself doesn't mean rejecting others. It means accepting your own worth. It means understanding that you are enough without needing anyone else to tell you that. It's the moment you let go of toxic relationships, the ones that drain you, the ones that make you feel less than, and you start to fill your life with people and things that nourish your soul. It's not always easy, and it's not always clear. Choosing yourself means letting go of the fear that you'll be alone, letting go of the idea that you have to prove your worth to anyone. It means embracing your own needs, prioritizing your own happiness, and giving yourself the permission to be whole without apology. And in choosing yourself, you realize something beautiful, that you were never broken to begin with. You've always been enough. You just needed to believe it. And once you do, once you fully embrace your own worth, everything changes. You stop looking for someone to complete you because you realize you are already complete. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. A soft goodbye. You never got to say. There are goodbyes we never speak aloud. Goodbyes we carry quietly in our hearts. Ones that echo in the silence where words were never exchanged. It's the goodbye that comes when a relationship fades, when a connection slips away, and you realize that the person you once held close is now a stranger. But no one ever said the words. Sometimes we don't get to say goodbye, because the ending comes without warning, without clarity, without closure. You don't get the chance to speak the truth of your heart, to express the sorrow, the longing, the questions that linger in the air between you. Instead, you're left with an unspoken farewell, a soft goodbye that you carry with you, hidden in the corners of your mind. And it stings, doesn't it? Not having the opportunity to say what you needed to say. To tell them that you cared, that you still think about them, that you never wanted to let go, even though you had to. But in the absence of these words, you learn something important. Some goodbyes don't need to be spoken. Sometimes, letting go means accepting that silence is the final answer. That the love that once existed no longer has a place in your life. And that, even without closure, you are free to move on. A soft goodbye is the quiet understanding that sometimes words are unnecessary. You don't need to hear their side. You don't need to get the final explanation, because you already know what you need to know. And the best thing you can do for yourself is to release the weight of that unspoken goodbye, to let go of the lingering questions, and to make peace with the absence. It's not easy, and it won't happen overnight. But in time, you'll realize that the goodbye you never got to say is okay, because you didn't need anyone else to validate your feelings. You've already said everything you needed to say, in your heart, in your actions, in the quiet understanding that sometimes the most powerful goodbyes are the ones we never have to speak. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. How to relearn love after being hurt. When you've been hurt, it's as if the world shifts. Love doesn't feel like it used to. The warmth, the trust, the openness, it all feels foreign, untouchable. You start to wonder if you'll ever be able to love the same way again, if your heart will ever be able to fully open without the shadow of fear and pain lurking nearby. Relearning love after hurt is not about forgetting what happened. It's about allowing yourself to heal, to give yourself permission to feel safe enough to love again. Because when we've been hurt, we put up walls. We shield our hearts, telling ourselves that if we don't open up fully, we won't get hurt again. But the truth is, those walls don't protect us. They isolate us. The first step in relearning love is acceptance. You have to accept that hurt is a part of life, a part of growth, but it does not define you. It does not dictate how you will love in the future. And it certainly doesn't have to stop you from being open to new connections, new relationships, new possibilities. The second step is forgiveness. Not necessarily for the other person, but for yourself. Forgive yourself for allowing the hurt, for allowing someone else to dim your light, for giving away parts of yourself that you didn't know were important. Forgiving yourself frees you from the past, so you can move forward without the weight of guilt or shame. The third step is self-love. You cannot relearn how to love others until you have learned to love yourself again. This doesn't mean you are perfect or that you are without scars. It means that you accept yourself, all of yourself. You recognize your worth, your strength, and the beauty in your resilience. You treat yourself with the same kindness, patience, and compassion that you would give to someone you truly love. Relearning love after being hurt takes time, and it's a journey, not a destination. But every small step you take towards healing, towards opening up again, is a victory. You will find that, in time, the hurt doesn't define how you love. You will find that your heart is capable of loving again, even more deeply than before, because now you love with awareness, with strength, and with a beautiful understanding of your own worth. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Forgiving someone who never said sorry. Forgiveness is a strange thing, especially when the person who hurt you never acknowledges their wrongs. It's one of those quiet burdens where the weight of their actions lingers, but the apology you so desperately need is never given. You wait for it. You wait for the words, the recognition that what they did hurt, that they see you, that they understand the damage. But sometimes, it never comes. And in the absence of that apology, you're left with the choice. Will you forgive them anyway? Forgiving someone who hasn't apologized feels unjust at times, doesn't it? How can you forgive when they don't even care to acknowledge your pain? How can you move on when they haven't offered you the validation you've been seeking? The truth is, forgiveness isn't about them. It's about you. It's about freeing yourself from the hold that their actions have on you. When you don't forgive, you carry the burden of their wrongs with you. You allow their actions to continue hurting you, even after the moment has passed. You give them the power to control your emotions, your peace, your future. But when you forgive, you release that power. You take back control of your heart, your peace, your life. Forgiving someone who never said sorry doesn't mean that what they did was okay. It doesn't mean you erase the hurt they caused. It simply means that you choose to let go of the emotional weight. You choose to no longer carry the anger, the resentment, the sadness, because those emotions are yours to release. They belong to you, and you have the right to heal. Forgiveness is an act of self-love, of reclaiming your power, of saying that you are not defined by what someone else did to you. You are defined by how you respond, how you choose to heal, and how you choose to move forward. And if they never say sorry, that's okay. Because you are freeing yourself. Not because they deserve it, but because you deserve peace. And that peace begins with you, in your own heart. And it's something no one can take away from you. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Healing the inner child that craves love. There's a part of you, a quiet, vulnerable part, that still carries the pain of childhood. The longing for love, the need for validation, the wish for affection that wasn't always given freely. It's the inner child within you, the one that once looked to others for safety and reassurance, and sometimes didn't find it. This child still lives inside you, shaped by the love you received or didn't receive growing up. The inner child craves love, but it's not just any love. It's the kind of love that heals, the kind of love that says, you are enough, you are worthy, you are safe. And yet, sometimes, we grow into adults without fully healing that inner part of us. We carry the scars, the abandonment, the fear that we are not lovable, and we seek to fill that void in our relationships, in the way we connect with others. But often, the love we seek from others isn't the healing we need. The journey of healing your inner child begins with acknowledging them. It begins with recognizing that the part of you that still seeks validation, the part that feels unworthy of love, deserves to be seen. It deserves to be comforted, nurtured, and held with tenderness. You can't heal the inner child by ignoring their needs, by pushing them away, or denying their pain. Healing comes from meeting that child with compassion, with understanding, and with the love they never received. You may find yourself drawn to relationships where you seek to heal the past, where you crave the love you didn't get as a child. But here's the truth. No one else can heal your inner child but you. It's your job to give them the love they need, to show them that they are worthy of affection, that they are worthy of care, without needing it from someone else. When you heal the inner child, you begin to love yourself fully, without needing others to fill the gaps. You learn that you can love yourself with the same kindness, the same compassion that you once sought from others. And in doing so, you create a foundation of self-worth that doesn't rely on external validation. You give your inner child the gift of safety, of peace, and of love. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. When you realize you're not broken. There's a moment that shifts everything. A quiet realization, almost like the first light of dawn after a long, dark night. It's the moment when you stop seeing yourself as someone who needs to be fixed, someone who is broken, someone who is flawed beyond repair. It's the moment you realize that, despite the hurt, the struggles, the pieces of yourself you've lost along the way, you are not broken. For so long, you may have believed that the pain you carry, the scars from past wounds, the doubts about your worth, were signs of something wrong with you. You've looked at your cracks and thought, if only I could be whole, if only I could be perfect, then I would be enough. But here's the truth. You've always been enough. You were never broken. You were just learning, growing, healing. Healing doesn't mean becoming flawless. It doesn't mean erasing the past or pretending the pain didn't happen. Healing is about understanding that your scars are not a mark of weakness, but a testament to your strength. They're not signs of what's wrong with you, but reminders of what you've survived, what you've overcome, what you've learned. You are not defined by your pain, by the mistakes you've made, by the parts of yourself that feel unhealed. You are defined by your resilience, by your willingness to keep going, by your capacity to love and forgive yourself, by your ability to grow, to rise, to become the person you're meant to be. The moment you realize you're not broken is the moment you stop seeking approval. Stop searching for someone else to make you feel whole. You are whole, exactly as you are. And while the journey to healing may still have its challenges, you walk it knowing that you are not a project to be fixed, but a person to be loved. In that realization, you find peace, you find freedom, and you find the strength to love yourself just as you are. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Why healing feels like loneliness. Healing isn't always a peaceful journey. In fact, it can feel isolating. A quiet, sometimes painful experience of facing your own wounds, your own fears, and your own truths. And in the midst of healing, there's often a moment when you realize something. You are alone. It's not that people don't care. It's not that they've abandoned you. But there's something about healing that requires solitude. You can't heal other people's wounds. You can't rely on others to give you the answers. Healing comes from within, and that's a path you must walk alone, even if you're surrounded by people. Loneliness during healing isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's not an emptiness that needs to be fixed or avoided. Instead, it's a space for reflection, for introspection, for discovering the parts of yourself that were lost, that were buried, that you never had the chance to truly see. In this solitude, you begin to understand who you are, without the distractions, without the noise, without the influence of others. But still, it can feel like an ache, like a longing for connection, for comfort, for reassurance. And during this time, it's easy to mistake this loneliness for a sign of something wrong with you. That maybe you're not healing properly, maybe you're doing it wrong, maybe you're broken. But the truth is, this loneliness is part of the healing process. It's the space where you begin to reconnect with yourself, to redefine who you are, and to build the strength you need to move forward. Healing doesn't happen in a crowded room. It happens in the quiet, in the moments when you're forced to sit with yourself, when you can no longer ignore the parts of you that need love and care. And while it feels lonely now, that loneliness will eventually give way to a new kind of connection. A deeper, stronger connection with yourself. In time, the loneliness fades, and you realize that you are not alone. You've been with yourself all along, and the love you need is already inside of you. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Falling in love with solitude. Solitude often gets a bad reputation. It's often mistaken for loneliness, for emptiness, for something to be avoided. But solitude is not the absence of love. It's the presence of self. It's the space where you can truly be yourself, without the noise of the world telling you who you should be, without the distractions of the outside world. It's where you come face to face with your truest self and realize that you are enough just as you are. When you first find yourself alone, it can feel uncomfortable. The silence is loud. The absence of connection can be jarring. You may feel the urge to fill that space with noise, with activity, with anything to keep from facing the quiet within. But the truth is, solitude is not something to fear. It's something to embrace. Because in that quiet, you begin to discover the parts of yourself that you've ignored, the parts that have been buried under the weight of the world. Falling in love with solitude is not about avoiding relationships. It's about understanding that you can be whole on your own. You can be content, fulfilled, and peaceful without needing someone else to complete you. In solitude, you find your own voice, your own passions, your own dreams. Things that have been waiting for you to hear them. Solitude allows you to reconnect with yourself in ways that are impossible in the noise of life. It allows you to hear your own thoughts, to understand your own desires, and to learn how to love yourself in a way that doesn't depend on anyone else. You begin to realize that you don't need anyone to define your worth, because you are already whole. You are already worthy of love, of peace, of joy. Falling in love with solitude means understanding that it's not about being alone. It's about finding comfort in your own company. It's about discovering that you are enough without needing anyone else to fill the spaces within you. And in this love, you become the person who is whole, who is complete, who is strong, and who is ready to share that strength with others without needing them to complete you. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. How to trust again after betrayal. Betrayal shakes you to your core, doesn't it? It's not just the breaking of trust, it's the unraveling of the very foundation you thought was solid. The person you once trusted with your heart, your secrets, your deepest fears, turns out to be the one who shattered it all. And after that, trust feels impossible. How do you trust again when the very people who were meant to protect you have hurt you instead? How do you open your heart when it feels like it's been torn apart? Here's the truth. Healing from betrayal isn't about pretending it didn't happen. It's not about forgetting the pain or minimizing it. It's about learning to trust yourself again. Because when someone betrays you, they've broken a part of your heart, but they've also broken a part of your belief in yourself, your ability to read people, to trust your instincts, to make decisions. The first step in trusting again is forgiving yourself. You may wonder, why didn't I see the signs? Why did I ignore the red flags? But the truth is, you trusted them because you were willing to love fully, and that's not a mistake. You were brave enough to give your heart, and that takes strength, not weakness. So, forgive yourself for the trust you extended, and understand that trusting again doesn't mean you made the wrong choice before. It simply means you chose love, and you were willing to open yourself to connection, despite the risk. The second step is setting new boundaries. When trust is broken, it's not just about rebuilding it with the person who hurt you. It's about rebuilding it with yourself. It's about knowing what you will accept, what you will not tolerate, and how you can protect your heart moving forward. Trust can be rebuilt, but only when it is anchored in respect, understanding, and healthy boundaries. And finally, trust is a process. It takes time. It takes patience. And it takes the willingness to open yourself up again, even when the fear is still there. But each step you take towards rebuilding trust with others and with yourself is a victory. You'll never forget the betrayal, but you don't have to let it control you. You have the power to trust again, to love again, and to choose who gets to be a part of your heart. It starts with trusting yourself, your ability to heal, to learn, and to grow stronger. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Becoming the person you needed. There was a time, a quiet moment in your life, when you needed someone. Someone to hold you, to guide you, to tell you everything would be okay. You were searching for someone to be the person you needed, someone who would protect you, who would love you the way you always wished to be loved. And maybe they didn't come. Maybe the person you needed never appeared, and you were left feeling lost, wondering why the love you craved didn't come the way you imagined it. But here's the truth. You can be that person for yourself. You can be the person you needed all along. Becoming the person you needed doesn't mean becoming someone else. It means reclaiming your own power, learning to love yourself in ways that others couldn't, and giving yourself the love, the care, the attention that you once sought from others. It means filling the gaps, healing the wounds, and finding strength within yourself so that you can become whole, not by depending on someone else, but by being your own source of strength. You didn't have the love you needed from others at that moment, but you can start offering that love to yourself now. You can become your own protector, your own cheerleader, your own safe space. The truth is, the love you give to yourself becomes the foundation for all other love. Whether it's from family, friends, or a romantic partner. Becoming the person you needed also means growing through your pain. It means looking at the hurt you've endured, and instead of letting it define you, you choose to let it teach you. It means finding compassion for yourself, understanding that you did the best you could with the knowledge and resources you had at the time. And when you become the person you needed, you also become someone who can love others in the healthiest way possible. Because love, at its core, is about giving to others what you can first give to yourself. It's not about seeking validation from others to feel worthy. It's about standing in your own power, knowing that you are already enough. So, if you're still waiting for someone to show up and love you the way you needed, stop, look in the mirror. The person you needed was always you. And once you love yourself in the way you've always wanted, the world will shift, and the love you give will be the love you deserve. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Reclaiming yourself after losing someone. Loss has a way of stripping you down to your core, doesn't it? When someone you love walks away, or when a relationship ends, it can feel like a part of you is gone too. You might feel incomplete, like the pieces of who you were are scattered, and you can't quite remember how to put yourself back together. But here's the quiet truth. You are not lost. You are not broken. The person you were before the loss, the person you were with them, still exists within you. They may not be here, but you are still whole. Reclaiming yourself after losing someone doesn't mean forgetting them or pretending the loss didn't hurt. It means finding your way back to you. It's about rediscovering who you are outside of the relationship, outside of their presence in your life. In the moments of grief, when the pain feels overwhelming, take a deep breath and remind yourself, you are allowed to feel everything. You are allowed to mourn the loss, to feel sadness, anger, confusion. But you are also allowed to heal. You are allowed to rebuild yourself, to come back stronger, to remember the person you were before you ever met them, and to realize that through this journey, you can become even more than you were before. Reclaiming yourself means letting go of the belief that your worth was tied to someone else. It means remembering that you were whole before, and you are whole now. The love you gave was beautiful, but it doesn't define who you are. You are defined by your ability to love yourself, your ability to rise, your ability to keep moving forward, even when the road feels uncertain. So, as you walk this path of reclaiming yourself, Remember, you are not who you lost. You are not the emptiness they left behind. You are the person who can rebuild, who can grow, who can love again. And in the process, you will find that the pieces you thought were lost were never gone. They were just waiting for you to find them again. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Learning to love without losing yourself. It's a beautiful thing, isn't it? Love, in its truest form. The connection that brings two people together, that allows you to open your heart fully. But somewhere along the way, love can become confusing, especially when it starts to feel like giving your all means losing who you are. We've all been there, haven't we? That feeling where you're so consumed by love, so swept up in the other person's world, that you start to forget about your own. You become their world, their everything. But in doing so, you start to lose yourself in the process. Your needs, your desires, your identity, they fade into the background, and you're left wondering when you stopped being you. Learning to love without losing yourself means finding balance. It's understanding that love doesn't have to be about self-sacrifice, about giving up your dreams, your individuality, or your needs for the sake of the other person. True love thrives when both people can stand strong in their own identities, when both individuals are allowed to grow together without losing who they are. It's about recognizing that your worth is not defined by the love you give, but by the love you give to yourself. When you love yourself fully, you don't need someone else to complete you. You don't need their validation to feel worthy. Instead, you love from a place of abundance, from a place of self-respect, from a place of knowing that you are already whole. Learning to love without losing yourself also means setting boundaries. It's about understanding that your needs, your feelings, your space are just as important as theirs. It's okay to say no. It's okay to prioritize your well-being. It's okay to be you fully, unapologetically, while still showing up for the people you love. True love doesn't require you to shrink. It requires you to expand, to grow, to be the fullest version of yourself, while also nurturing the relationship you're building. So, if you find yourself giving too much, if you find yourself losing sight of who you are in the process of loving someone else, pause. Take a step back. Remember that love is not about losing yourself, but about finding a way to be both fully you and fully connected with someone else. And in that space, love can truly flourish. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. When affection feels unsafe. Have you ever been in a relationship where affection, the very thing that's supposed to make you feel safe, actually makes you feel uneasy? When you long for touch, for closeness, but the very idea of it leaves you feeling trapped, vulnerable in ways you're not ready for. Affection is meant to be a source of warmth, a reminder that you are cared for, that you are loved. But when trust has been broken, when past wounds have yet to heal, affection can feel like an invasion, like an unwanted demand. It can feel overwhelming, unnerving, like your heart isn't ready to open just yet. When affection feels unsafe, it's often because we haven't yet healed from past hurts. We've been let down, betrayed, or emotionally neglected. And the idea of someone getting too close again scares us. We fear that affection will be used against us, that love will come with strings attached, or worse, that it will be withdrawn when we need it most. But here's the truth. Love and affection, when given in a healthy, safe way, should never feel like a burden. True affection should make you feel secure, not anxious. It should comfort you, not overwhelm you. If affection feels unsafe, it's okay to take a step back. It's okay to say that you need space, that you need time to trust again, to rebuild your own sense of safety before you can fully open up. You don't need to rush into closeness before you're ready. And you certainly don't need to accept affection that doesn't feel authentic or safe. When you find the right kind of love, you'll notice that affection doesn't feel like an obligation. It feels like a choice, a gift, a way to nurture the connection without fear of losing yourself. And in that safe space, you'll realize that affection is not something to fear. It's something to cherish. So, if affection feels unsafe, take the time you need to heal, to learn what makes you feel secure, and to create a space where love can grow without fear. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Are you in love or just trauma bonded? Sometimes love doesn't feel like love at all. It feels like an emotional roller coaster, with highs that are exhilarating and lows that are gut-wrenching. The intensity of the connection pulls you in, leaves you breathless, and for a while, you might believe that this is what love should feel like. But what if it's not love at all? What if it's trauma? Trauma bonding happens when you find yourself attached to someone who triggers your deepest wounds, someone who makes you feel needed, wanted, but also uncertain. It's a bond formed in the cycle of love and pain, attraction and rejection, where the moments of affection are interspersed with moments of emotional chaos. It's a pattern where you give your heart fully, only to find it shattered over and over again. At first, it feels like passion, like the kind of connection you've always dreamed of. But deep down, it's a bond rooted in survival, not love. When you're trauma bonded, you crave the highs, but you also get hooked on the lows. You start to believe that the drama, the conflict, the tension is just a natural part of love. But in reality, it's the trauma from the past, the unhealed wounds, the emotional baggage that's keeping you tethered to the person, even though the relationship is unhealthy. Love should make you feel secure, seen, and safe. But trauma bonding makes you feel anxious, unsettled, and emotionally exhausted. You're not growing together. You're stuck in a cycle of emotional chaos, and no amount of love can fix that. The highs are not enough to make up for the deep emotional toll of the lows. So, how do you tell the difference? Love is steady. It's calm. It's nurturing. It's supportive. It doesn't keep you on edge, wondering when the next fight will come, or if your partner will pull away. Love should make you feel stronger, more secure in who you are. Trauma bonding, on the other hand, keeps you stuck in a pattern of fear and longing, unable to break free. If you find yourself in a relationship that feels like an emotional roller coaster, take a step back. Ask yourself, am I in love, or am I just attached to the chaos? It's okay to walk away from a bond that doesn't serve your healing, to break free from a cycle that keeps you stuck in the past. Love that heals, that builds, that strengthens, is the kind of love you deserve. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. The fear beneath jealousy. Jealousy. It creeps in like an unwelcome shadow, clouding your thoughts, blurring your vision, making everything around you feel smaller, sharper, harder. But what is it really? It is not the emotion itself that haunts you. It's the fear that lives beneath it. You see, jealousy is the skin of a much deeper wound. It is the surface response to an underlying fear of losing something precious, of being left behind in the quiet drift of time. It is the fear that the love you cherish is not as solid as you wish it were, not as permanent as you need it to be. In moments of jealousy, you are not battling the person who stands before you, or the situation that unfolds in front of you. You are battling the fear that you are not enough, that the world might just turn away from you when you least expect it. Imagine, just for a moment, the intensity of that fear. The heartbeats that echo in your chest when you think about losing the one you love. The breath that catches in your throat as you witness something that feels like an unwelcome intrusion into your space. But what if, just for a second, you could see beyond that fear? What if you could understand that jealousy does not rise from love, but from the insecurity that shadows it? That in truth, the depth of your feelings speaks more about your own fears than about the one you fear losing. The heart, fragile and tender, seeks comfort in certainty. It longs to know that it is seen, that it is cherished, that it will never be abandoned. Yet the world is full of uncertainties, and it is this very uncertainty that gives rise to jealousy. But here's the truth. Jealousy, in all its intensity, only reveals the fragility within yourself. The parts of you that still need healing. The parts that long to feel enough, without needing constant validation from others. It whispers the truth that you are whole, even when the world around you shifts. Take a deep breath and listen closely to that whisper. For when you learn to soothe the fear beneath jealousy, you begin to see not only the other person more clearly, but yourself as well. You realize that love, in its purest form, is not about ownership, nor control, nor certainty. It is a trust, a shared vulnerability, and a freedom that only exists when both hearts are allowed to bloom without fear. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. When you mistake intensity for intimacy. There's a feeling you know well. The rush, the flood of emotions that sweep through you when someone stirs something deep inside. It's like a spark igniting a fire, an overwhelming sensation that fills every inch of your being. The connection feels profound, unmistakable, as if everything around you fades away, and only this moment exists. But here lies the paradox. Sometimes that intensity we feel is not intimacy. Intimacy isn't the force of the storm. It's the quiet after the thunder. It's the steady, consistent presence that doesn't need fireworks to prove its depth. It's a knowing, a gentle touch that asks no more than it's willing to give. And yet, in the whirlwind of passion, you may mistake the burning heat for the warmth of love. You think the intensity, the pull, the craving is proof of a connection that runs deep. But does it? Or is it simply the fire of desire, the collision of two worlds that have yet to truly understand each other? You feel the rush of emotions, and it's easy to believe that this is what closeness feels like. But intimacy is not measured by the strength of the wave, but by the depth of the ocean beneath. It's in the moments of silence, the shared glances, the comfort of simply being. It's in the space between words where trust lives. The body can burn, the heart can race, but intimacy, true intimacy, grows slowly, like a vine creeping along the ground. It requires patience, it requires understanding, and it requires you to see each other, not just in moments of passion, but in every quiet space in between. Because intimacy, in its truest form, isn't about being consumed by another person. It's about learning to exist alongside them, to share a world, to grow together in tenderness and trust. It's not always loud, nor is it always bright, but it is always steady, always there, like the earth beneath your feet. So when you feel the rush, the spark, ask yourself, is this intensity or is this intimacy? And listen closely, for the answer lies not in the flames, but in the soft, patient rhythm of two hearts quietly learning to beat as one. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Why you're attracted to emotionally unavailable people. There's a familiar tug in your chest, an attraction to someone who, deep down, you know may not be able to offer you what you need. It's a peculiar thing, isn't it? The heart pulling toward those who seem distant, those who cannot, or will not, give you the depth of connection you crave. It is easy to look at these people and see only what is missing: the emotional availability, the vulnerability, the openness you desire. And yet, here you are, drawn toward them, as if the distance between you both is a magnetic force you cannot resist. But why? Why do we seek out the very thing that seems to leave us empty? The answer lies in something more than just desire. It speaks to something deeper, a longing that isn't always rooted in logic. Perhaps it's the echo of past experiences, of patterns that have shaped your emotional world, a longing for something familiar, even if it's painful. You may find comfort in the unattainable. In the pursuit of someone who can never fully be yours, you protect yourself from the vulnerability that true intimacy demands. If they're emotionally unavailable, you don't have to truly open up. You don't have to risk being seen in all your rawness and imperfection. Instead, you can cling to the idea of what could be, without ever facing the reality of what is. And somewhere deep within, you might not even believe you deserve the kind of love that comes with openness, that comes with vulnerability. So, you settle for the chase. You hold on to the hope that one day maybe they'll change. But in doing so, you never allow yourself the chance to experience the fullness of love, the kind that requires both people to be present, to be seen, to be real. What if, instead of seeking out the unavailable, you chose to be available to yourself? What if you embraced the possibility of a love that doesn't have to be chased, that doesn't need to be earned? You are worthy of a connection where both hearts meet, not at a distance, but in the same space, ready to give, ready to share. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. The psychology behind "I can fix them." There's a story you might tell yourself, one that sounds noble, even heroic. I can fix them. You see someone broken, someone in need, and your heart, full of compassion, reaches out to heal. You believe in the power of your love, the strength of your care. You think that with enough patience, enough understanding, you can help them become whole again. But here's the truth. This desire to fix is not always about them. It's often about you. It's about the feeling of importance, the sense of purpose that comes with being the one to save another. It's about feeling needed, about finding a role to play in someone else's story. You see, in the act of fixing, you often forget one simple truth. They have to want to be fixed. Without their willingness to heal, without their own commitment to change, your efforts become a form of control. You give and give, but they don't change. Not because they don't want to, but because they're not ready, or because they don't see the need for change that you do. In truth, the impulse to fix others can often stem from an internal need. A need to feel valued, to feel like you matter in a way that transcends the ordinary. The belief that if you can help someone, you can prove your worth, both to them and to yourself. But in this pursuit, you lose sight of your own needs, your own boundaries. You become so absorbed in their story that you forget to write your own. And so, you give and give, trying to fix what you cannot. You sacrifice your own peace, your own joy, for a dream that may never come to fruition. The question then is not whether you can fix them, but whether you should. Can you love them without the need to change them? Can you accept them as they are, imperfections and all, without the desire to reshape them into something they are not? The truth is, love doesn't need to fix. Love simply needs to be. And sometimes, the greatest act of love is not trying to change someone, but allowing them to be who they are, and loving them even in their brokenness. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. When being needed feels like being loved. There's a quiet satisfaction in being needed, isn't there? The feeling of being indispensable to someone, of holding a place in their life that no one else can occupy. When someone turns to you for support, for guidance, for love, it feels like a validation, a confirmation that you are not just present, but essential. And in that moment, it is easy to mistake being needed for being loved. After all, love, in its purest form, is about connection, about finding someone who sees you, values you, and cherishes you. So when you are needed, when someone relies on you, it seems to mirror that feeling. It feels comforting, safe, even fulfilling. But there is a subtle difference, one that is easy to overlook. Being needed is rooted in dependency, in a desire for someone to rely on you. It can make you feel important, even irreplaceable. But true love does not thrive on need. It flourishes in freedom, in the space where two people stand side by side, not bound by necessity, but united by choice. The danger in mistaking need for love is that it can lead you to sacrifice too much of yourself, to become so wrapped up in fulfilling someone else's needs that you forget your own. In relationships like these, you might feel exhausted, drained, as though you are giving more than you receive. The bond becomes lopsided, with one person continually taking and the other continually giving, until love, in its truest form, fades into the background. You may start to wonder, do they love me, or do they simply need me? Am I truly valued for who I am, or am I just fulfilling a role? These are questions that require patience and self-reflection. True love is not a duty, nor a service. It is a connection that uplifts both individuals equally. So, take a moment to ask yourself, are you being loved, or are you just being needed? And remember, to be loved is to be seen, not just for what you can give, but for who you are in all your fullness. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Seeking chaos to avoid boredom. Boredom, that quiet, hollow space where nothing happens and everything feels stagnant. It's uncomfortable, isn't it? The silence feels heavy, the stillness oppressive, and the emptiness too vast to ignore. So, what do you do when the world feels too quiet? You seek chaos. The chaos is an escape, a distraction from the discomfort of being with yourself, of confronting the spaces where your mind has nowhere to go. You stir up a storm, fill the silence with noise, with conflict, with drama. Because in the chaos, you don't have to feel the stillness. You don't have to face what lies beneath. But here's the irony. In seeking chaos, you only deepen the void. The distractions don't fill you. They don't heal the restlessness inside. They just temporarily silence it. In the chaos, you feel alive, but only for a moment. Once it fades, the quiet returns, often louder than before. And now, instead of confronting boredom, you are left to deal with the aftermath, exhaustion, regret, and the nagging feeling that you have lost more than you gained. Why do we do this to ourselves? Why do we run toward the very thing that we know only brings temporary relief? Perhaps it's because chaos feels like control. It feels like something, even if it's destructive. It's the illusion of power in a world that often feels too overwhelming, too unsteady. The problem is that chaos is not control. It is a surrender to unpredictability, a spiral that takes you further away from peace. What if, instead of running toward chaos, you could sit with the silence? What if you allowed yourself to breathe in the stillness, to find comfort in the quiet? Boredom, after all, isn't the enemy. It's the space where you find yourself, where you have the chance to reconnect with who you truly are, beyond the noise, beyond the distractions. In the silence, there is room for growth. There is room for you to breathe, to reflect, and to become. The restlessness fades when you stop running from it, when you stop seeking chaos as a way to escape the most important thing of all, yourself. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. When you love more than you're loved, there's a deep, quiet ache in loving someone more than they love you. It doesn't shout or scream, it lingers. It's the hollow feeling in your chest when you give and give. Yet the reflection of your love seems distant, unreturned. You offer your heart, your care, your time, and still you wonder if they see it. Wonder if they feel it the same way. The imbalance is felt in the subtle spaces, the silence after your efforts, the moments when you pause and question if your love is being noticed, or if it's just fading into the background of their life. The weight of giving more than you're given back can be crushing, not because the love isn't real, but because it feels unreciprocated. It's easy to feel unimportant in these moments, as though the love you've poured out has disappeared into an empty room. But love is not always about receiving. It's also about giving, even when the other person may not fully see or understand it. And yet, this can become a bitter place to live. The truth is, you can only love so much before you begin to lose yourself in the process. Love, when unbalanced, can drain you. It can leave you questioning your worth, your value in the relationship. But here's the deeper truth. When you love more than you're loved, it often reflects something you haven't yet given yourself. You pour love into others because it feels good to give. But when it isn't returned, you're left wondering if you're worthy of that love in return. Perhaps the love you seek from others is the very love you have not yet given yourself. Perhaps, instead of chasing validation from outside, the real journey begins within. You are worthy of love that matches your own. And while it's beautiful to give, it's also necessary to receive. So, ask yourself, in loving them so deeply, have you forgotten to love yourself just as much? Have you given so much of your heart to them that you have no more left for yourself? In this quiet ache, remember, the love you deserve is the love you are already learning to give to yourself. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. The cost of always being the bigger person. There is a quiet strength in being the bigger person. The one who lets go of petty grievances, who chooses patience over anger, who stands with grace when others might falter. It feels noble, doesn't it? A quiet heroism in choosing to rise above, to be the calm in the storm. But there is a hidden cost to always being the bigger person, one that isn't often acknowledged. It's not the grand gestures or the visible acts of kindness that wear you down. It's the little sacrifices, the unspoken compromises. It's the emotional labor of constantly choosing peace. When your heart is quietly bruised, the mental exhaustion of putting others before yourself, even when it feels like no one is noticing. In always being the bigger person, you may find yourself carrying more than your share, absorbing the weight of conflicts that aren't yours to resolve. You take on the pain of others, the misunderstandings, the missteps, and you hold it all, trying to fix what doesn't belong to you. And while the world sees your grace, they might not see how much you're giving up in the process. They don't see the quiet weariness that comes from always putting the other person's needs ahead of your own. Eventually, there's a breaking point. The heart can only extend so far before it begins to lose its warmth. The hand can only reach out so many times before it becomes tired. And in your effort to remain the bigger person, you may lose sight of your own needs. You may sacrifice your own peace, your own happiness, in the name of keeping the peace for others. True strength isn't in being the bigger person at all costs. It's in knowing when to stand firm for yourself, when to say enough, and when to step back. It's recognizing that while grace is important, it should never come at the cost of your own well-being. So, take a moment to ask yourself, in always being the bigger person, have you forgotten to be kind to yourself? The peace you offer others must first be a peace you give yourself.